Doobie doo. Doobie doobie. Doobie doobie doo. Good evening, everyone who's joining us later, or who's watching this later. We have another one of our semi-regularly unscheduled live streams. And this evening we have no topic. It's not entirely true. I have a few little tiny minor topics. I guess I should tell you what they are so you can see whether or not you want to stick around for them. I got a new gun. I'm pretty excited about the new gun. So we're going to talk about the new gun. And some of what... Just, hey, Palmetto, what's up there? Mark. My patriotic Catholic friends. How you doing, sir? Yeah, we got a new gun, so we're going to be talking about our new gun and some of the thoughts it has given me. Captain Nemo. I should go get... I have some bourbon, actually, for once. I should go get a glass. Stick with me for a minute, man. I went and visited the Sasquatch this last week. Atlanta Light. Is that popcorn and gasoline? So I have some thoughts. Oh, wow. Mark gave one of his sons a Glock 26 for his birthday. Which Glock is that, Mark? I'm not up on my... Hey, Brian. I'm not up on my Glock models. It's a pretty good birthday present, though. So I went and saw the Sasquatch this week, so we have some thoughts stemming from there, small 9mm. And then we're just going to have a little check-in on the world situation. Mark had a good comment back on our short this week. We didn't do a real video this week. We just did a short. And Mark had a comment, and I don't remember what it was now. But it had made me think about something. Anyway, hey, Buddy Bear is here. I'm sure Buddy Bear will have something good to say that will send us off down on a rabbit trail as well. Although he's not going to stick with us very long because milking time comes early in the morning. And I got to spend some time with some brothers this weekend in two different settings. So at Sasquatch's place, hey, Tim. There were 3 or 4 other men there, including Practitioner Bones, who pops in on the channel from time to time. And has still done the best medical class I have ever heard. Who else was? Oh, there were some other men there. And then I spent the weekend with a bunch of brothers who share some of my more exotic religious beliefs that I won't bore you all with. Although they're not boring. They're relatively exotic. But it was a very interesting time because one of those exotic topics, not the only one, but one of them is just sort of a radical patriarchy. We're all exploring how to implement, because no one's done it. I mean, it's all a theory right now. Everyone's trying to figure out how to implement a radical patriarchy, but we don't know how to do it. Some have been better at it than others. But that was a very interesting time, very good time. We go to this retreat every year, and it's always a very good time. Sometimes I've put some videos up from it, but not this year. So I have some thoughts about all that. And the sort of tie into some leadership failings in my own life, some areas where I have not been living up to a patriarchal ideal. But let's talk about my new gun first, because it's kind of nice. The Sasquatch, can't decide if I'm his younger brother or his nephew. It's one of the two, and he can't make up his mind. And this week he decided I was his nephew. And he is not. I'm not. He's. We're not related, by the way. He's. I think he's 10, 15 years older than me. I can't remember exactly which. But he decided to just be generous beyond belief and give me a rifle. That's the only way I can afford to get a new gun right now. So he gave me. It's been on the channel before because he lent it to me once for a really long time. He let me borrow it for like 6 months one time. But he went ahead and gave me the Rossi R92 that you may have seen on the channel. This was several years ago now, which is a little lever action. It's based off the Winchester Model 92, 1892. And it's just as slick as can be, little lever action rifle chambered in 357. I love it. I adore it. It is beautimous. And I think it is just one of the most handy, useful little rifles you could ever. In this area where I live, I think you could get away with that being your only rifle. There's this sort of famous, hey, Lance Corporal veteran, how you doing, sir? There's this sort of famous second-tier civil rights figure named Ida B. Wells. Don't know much about her, but she had this great quote where she said, I mean, no, if that's not enough light. She had said at one point that the Winchester rifle was the greatest tool of freedom ever devised, or something like that. The greatest advancement of civil rights, whatever it was. I can't remember what she said, but she said, the Winchester rifle had done more for black people than anything else. And she was living and writing in the 20s and 30s, if I remember correctly. So for that period, the lever action rifle was like the AR-15. It was the AR-15 of America. It was, a lot of firepower, intermediate cartridges, light, handy, fast handling, good for everything. And her implication was what we all agree, that an armed man is a free man. And she said that about the. Okay, Mark, let's talk about that real quick, Mark, because I'll forget if we don't deal with it. So I've been watching some videos about it, and it has a 16-inch barrel. You can get them in 16, 20, or 24. This one is the 16. If I was buying it brand new, I would probably look for the 20-inch barrel, but only because it gives you an extra round of capacity. And I'm sure the 4 extra inches probably gives you a little bit extra velocity. But the videos I was watching, it looks like they're getting 158 grain bullets up around 1,800 feet per second. That seems like it's pretty standard. Or at least I was seeing, I've watched 3 or 4 videos. But everything I watched, it looked like a 158 grain bullet could get up around 1,800 feet per second. Now they're not Spitzer bullets. They're not boat tailed. They're not pointed. They're not the modern, ballistically efficient bullets. They're just big, heavy pistol bullets. So they have absolutely no staying power, but within its intended range, 158 grains at 1,800 feet per second. Would you be? What would you be scared to shoot with that? If you absolutely had to shoot something with that, what would you be scared to shoot? The 357 was originally designed for bear hunting in 6-inch revolvers. That was Elmer Keith's original design for it. I want to say grizzly bear hunting too. I know it was out west. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just black bear, whatever. But he originally designed it so that you can, and they went on all, then when they started promoting it, they were going on all these bear hunts with the 357 Magnum, in a 6-inch revolver, shooting bears. And that was in the 6-inch revolver without modern bullets. So living on the East Coast as I do, in the foothills of the Appalachians, as I do, you have to go out of your way to find a 100-yard shot. I mean, you have it's not there, especially if you're hunting. Yeah, we're hunting forests. We're hunting even the power cuts. If you get on a power cut, it's it's still 100 yards, and anything more than that is is unless you go down on the railroad. Now, that's the only place where you could get a long shot if you were shooting down the railroad tracks. And good luck finding a deer on the railroad tracks. They're too narrow. Anywho, uh, you guys are being interesting again. So anyway, to go back to its performance, yeah, 158 grains at 1,800 feet per second. I'm good with that. I'm assuming the 125 grains going to be even more than that. Who knows? You might even have them up around 1,900 feet per second. Maybe if you got some of that lever, lever, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's that ammo made specifically for lever. It's the pistol calibers made specifically for the lever actions. Yeah, who knows? You might be able to get some of that stuff around 2,000 feet per second. Yeah, Lance Corporal Veteran. I just got an R92, a little Rossi R92, 16-inch barrel, 357 lever action. I would show it to you, but the instant I handle a gun on a live stream, they dump the whole stream and ban me for a week, which normally would piss me off. But when I actually read their reasoning, it made sense. Some people were committing suicide on live streams. They were, committing crimes on live streams, and it actually made sense to me. They don't want you handling guns on live streams for those reasons. Good evening, Dean. Oh yeah, that'd be a good idea. It's just a Rossi 92. If you're not familiar with it, it's based off of a John Browning design, because everything is based off a John Browning design. The big problem with lever actions in the early days is they had that toggle lock, and so if you put powerful cartridges in them, they were powerful enough to overcome the resistance of that toggle lock. And actually, it sounds like they might have been semi-automatic. That doesn't make any sense. But moderately semi-automatic. I think that's why a lot of early semi-autos were toggle locks. And John Browning came up with this system where instead of a toggle lock, is what a toggle lock is. You men, if you're what. John Browning came up with this idea where instead of toggle lock, he has two bars that go straight up. When you pull the lever down, the bars drop down, and it allows, and you. It's a really good little design, and it was a big step forward for lever actions because you could start having more powerful cartridges in them. I don't think the 357 is actually too powerful for a toggle lock, but it might be. It might be right there on the edge. I don't know. So that's all it is. It looks just like a cowboy gun. Wood furniture, blued. It just looks exactly like something John Wayne would have had in his saddle scabbard. They're really cool. It only weighs 6 pounds, so it's lighter than my what would stoner do, or my stoner rifle, which is 6.5 pounds as it sits with the scope and the sling. This is 6 pounds by itself and just slick as can be. Well, I was shooting it this weekend up at Sasquatch's place. Sasquatch has a beautiful place in Tennessee that he might be selling if anyone wants a beautiful place in northwestern Tennessee. The guy next to me had a shorty AR. I think it was a 7-inch barrel. And it's just 5.56. I think it was a 7-inch. It might have been a 10-inch. It was somewhere in that range. It was short. It was a short one. And every time he shot, it was just boom and concussion and this giant flame and just loud as could be. Yeah, Mark, I want a leather sling. I haven't decided how I'm going to attach it yet, but I want to get a leather sling for it. I might get a buttstock cover that has a loop on it, and then I could even have some extra cartridges there in the buttstock. You could also use a little bit more cheek weld for me. I wouldn't mind the cheek weld being a little higher, but anyway. But it was this huge contrast because that guy, he would fire off with that shorty AR, and then I would shoot that 357, and it was at least half as quiet. Lance Corporal Veteran asked, "Does the East Coast feel easy to get around to multiple states in a short amount of time?" So it depends on where you live. I live in extreme Northeast Georgia. I am 10 minutes from South Carolina. I am 45 minutes from North Carolina, and I'm probably 45 to 50 minutes from Tennessee, depending on where in Tennessee I want to go. So if I'm just trying to get across the border in the quickest ways. So yeah, I'm within 45 minutes of, 3 different states. But if I lived down in Macon, I would be, 4 hours, 3.5, 4 hours from Florida, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours from South Carolina, and an hour and a half, 2 hours from Alabama. So, and then, 2.5 to, well, three to 3.5 hours from North Carolina, Tennessee, and North Carolina and Tennessee. So it depends where you live. Where Sasquatch lives in northwestern Tennessee, he's not too far from Virginia and West Virginia. Yeah, Dean, I am within striking distance of Cashiers and Highland. In fact, we went through Highland on our way back from Sasquatch's. I'm not that would be like the first place I would get to in North Carolina would be Highlands, Franklin, all that. I guess Franklin would be the first thing I would be getting to. So I know that's different. Like in Texas, those assholes. Uh, it can take 10 hours just to get across the damn state. Yeah, get another thing. Oh, Lance Corporal Veteran's friend bought a Rossi 3030 and turned it into a tactical lever gun. I'm tempted to do that. It does look kind of cool. Yeah, California is another one. 16 hours to drive up and down it, and 3 hours to get across it. But I was really struck by shooting that Rossi. Hey, Jerry, how you doing, sir? Shooting that Rossi next to that AR shorty. Tough guy, huh? We'll drive 2 hours just for Wes freaking S. What the hell? Good to see you, brother. Glad to know you're still out there. I feel like it's been a while since we've heard from Wes S. That's probably more on me for not having gone to check out his channel. I hope all is well, brother. Give us an update in the comments here. This guy with this shorty next to me, and by the way, good guy, you like him a lot, knows what he's doing. This is not a criticism of him or his gun, but it was an interesting contrast. The shorties have their place. I'd be interested to know what performance they give up in those short barrels on the 5.56. What is that 55 grain bullet doing out of a 7-inch barrel? My beard looks awful tonight. The new baby is about 6 months old, 7 months old now, and he loves just tearing my beard out with it. He gives him so much joy. I'm doing well, Alex. Thank you, sir. It is good to hear from you, too. It feels like it's been a while since we've heard from Alex. Alex is out west. Oh. And Alex doesn't go below 11.5. So I'm wondering what kind of Wes is just trying to be a better him. If that means you're a different you, Wes, we'd rather you be a worse you because we like you. I'm not sure that squares with my theological stance, but we're gonna go with it. What kind of performance is he giving up? Uh, and, and then the trade-off is this massive I want to be careful, but this extremely loud report, incredibly increased decibel levels, and signature. There's this huge flash, and what's he gaining in terms of portability and maneuverability? And then I was trying to just do some mental math. Had 22 mag performance, Mark says. Hopefully it's not that bad. And compare it to that 357 in that 16-inch barrel with a much lower report. It's that 357 is almost, I'm not saying it is, I'm saying it is almost hearing safe. Yeah, that's one good reason to have a shorty is for the suppressor. In fact, I think if you're going to have a shorty, you kind of need a suppressor. But then why do you have if you need a suppressor to have a shorty and you need a shorty to have a suppressor, I don't know. Put cans up there too. I don't know. It's Liquid Nasir is having an interesting conversation with himself. I wish I knew what he was talking about. But what's the actual advantage versus that 357, 158 grains at 1,800 feet per second? Now I bet that shorty AR still has better range than that lever gun. I bet being able to shoot strike 2 liquid. Being able to shoot modern bullets, it probably still has a better range, even with that short barrel. It's probably more accurate. Obviously, it's easier to have better sights. You can get optics easy. It's gonna have the pick rail on top no matter what. Hey, John Willis, I just get my cigars from a local humidor. They're just factory seconds. I get them in blocks of 20. It's like $40 for a block. They're just simple, enjoyable cigars. I don't have like any kind of they're literally like $2 a pop. I don't have any kind of, developed taste. I just like the experience. It's just a nice moment to sit and smoke a cigar, and especially it's one of the things I got to do this weekend was smoke cigars with men. I love just sitting down with men and smoking cigars. The conversations that will flow are just the stuff of life. They really are, Alex. They go together well. Oh. And I got to do a lot of that this weekend. I actually left without my cigars. Fortunately, I had been generous enough with my cigars in the past that other men showed up with cigars that they wanted to share. I had spread the culture a little bit. Not just me. There was another guy involved he wasn't there this time, but in the past he's also been real generous with his cigars, and so we've established a little bit of a cigar culture in the group. And so I still got to smoke cigars even though I forgot mine. We were just outside of Gatlinburg, and I went into Gatlinburg to buy cigars, and boy, that was a mistake. Dear Lord. Oh, thank you, Wes. I couldn't figure out what was going on. He wasn't making sense with what the hell he was saying. But maybe I missed something. Or maybe you know him from somewhere else. So anyway, what I was thinking about all this thing is, we've all heard the old phrase, never let perfect be the enemy of good enough. And, we're all, and I'm the same way. I do this too. I love it. Yeah. As you've heard the old phrase, never let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Yeah, and we're all trying to get the ARs perfect. And I'm the same way. I love the gear. I love the guns. I love, Legos for men, right? I'm down for all of it. I'm here for it. Let's do it. Support the industry. I have 8 sons. I want an AR for all 8 of them. But how much better served might I be out here in the middle of nowhere? Y'all can probably hear the crickets in the background. I don't know if you knew that. Why didn't anyone tell me about the 338 arc? Because I didn't know about the 338 arc. Wes, you're going to have to tell me about the 338 arc. Why didn't you tell me about the 338 arc? Bad friend. Disappear for a year and then come back and haven't even told me about the 338 arc. Right. Yeah, no, Mark, the paper plate at 100 yards. You know what? Out here at the end of this dirt road where nobody comes, am I not possibly better served by this short 357 rifle with no recoil, just no recoil whatsoever? And almost hearing safe. I have shot it with 125 grains without earplugs because something was after the chickens one time back when I had borrowed it before. And a new caliber for short AR platform. Okay, so it's going to be a 338, so it's going to be a thicker bullet. I guess heavier, more mass, probably lower velocity, less report, probably suppresses a little better. Is this like an evolution of the 300 Blackout? Ever heard of trespassers camping on anyone's land near you? It's not necessarily really a thing out here, Lance Corporal Veteran, because I'm out in the country, but I'm 5 miles from a Walmart. Or yeah, 5, maybe it's 8. I can't remember. We're close to a Walmart, and there's just not the big, huge, contiguous tracts of land. I have 2.4 acres. The neighbor on the other side of me has 3.6. Supposed to be better than 300 Blackout. The neighbor on that side's got like an acre and a half. The guy behind me's got 25 acres, and the guy next to him's got 25. So there's just not any like big contiguous tracks where anyone would be tempted to go camping. And everyone there's people who live on all of these lots. So not only are there no big contiguous tracks, there's no vacant tracks. So the last time I had anything I was even moderately concerned about, some crackhead from a couple miles up had gotten high as a kite. Yeah, it's a very cool place to live in. And he had wandered. I lived down a dirt road, and the crackhead was, in shorts, shirtless, shoeless, and he was wandering around, lost as could be, looking for crack. And he walked into my front yard, and we were actually having a little family cookout. So, like, my older sons were here. I probably had 5 or 6 men here, all with, close blood ties to me. And the dog was going nuts. Rah, 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 rah. And I walk up to this guy, and I said, "Can I help you?" And he looked at me and said, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Dude, you're on my place. What are you doing?" He was like, No, this isn't your place. I was down here earlier, and there's a camp down here where all these guys are camping out, and I'm just going down here to talk to the guys at the camp." And I said, "Sir, you are highly mistaken. May I suggest that you turn around and go the other direction?" And he realized he was highly mistaken, and he turned around and went the other direction. And a few hours later, my stepdaughter came home and said she had got held up the road because some crackhead had got the shit kicked out of him trespassing on somebody else's property. And it was the talk of the area for about 3 months. Yeah. That was the closest thing to a disturbance I've ever had down here. Because you can come all the way down to the end of the road and not see us. Literally, like you can drive to the end of this road and not know we're down here. Yeah, I felt bad for the crackhead. He apparently he got beat pretty bad. Apparently, they hauled him off in the ambulance. I don't know who did it or why. I didn't hear the end of the story. Uh, but you just don't go wandering around in the country telling people, can I help you when you're on their land? I was a little surprised the dogs didn't maul him because he was in bad shape. He was high as a kite. Uh, okay, I've missed some stuff here. But that being said, we just don't have problems like that out here. We're a really kind of cool little. There's some advantages to living on the East Coast. We're out in the country. We're rural. We've got that whole rural vibe and feel. But there's just enough people around that you can kind of count on them, and there's not so many that you don't know everybody. It's a real nice little sweet spot we live in here. Okay, let's see what I missed. Okay, Wes says it's better than 300 Blackout. 338 ARC is a Hornady cartridge designed for AR-15 platforms, offering significant power in both supersonic and subsonic applications while maintaining compatibility with the AR-15 action. I'm assuming it also uses AR-15 magazines. Via a 6.5 Grendel bolt face, it provides 1.5 times more. This is more numbers than I've ever heard Wes say in my entire relationship with him. A 6.5 Grendel bolt face, it provides 1.5 times more energy than the 300 Blackout subsonic round and can be used for hunting big game like deer and wild hogs as well as tactical purposes. Okay, so if it uses the 6.5 Grendel, I think it still uses the AR-15 mag. Dean lives on a dead-end road with a 200-yard driveway and have had those types of folks walking the road in the middle of the night. God, 200 yards. I can't imagine a 200-yard driveway. That would be awesome. Thanks to its versatile 338 caliber bullet and options for both standard and heavy projectiles. Lance Corporal veteran lives in a residential neighborhood and once ran off a homeless guy who jumped my neighbor's fence because he was looking the vacant house nearby to squat in. Yeah. So they do have those problems, especially closer down towards the city. I'm about an hour and 45 minutes away from Atlanta. And they have a squatter problem down there. But anyhow. But, my go-to gun for that's just hanging above the back door in case anything gets at the chickens or anything. Damn, West is a evangelist for this 338 ARC. Night Howler sticks. Shots fired. West, Night Howler just called you bougie. Nice. Nice Howler says, I avoid bougie rounds. I'll stick to the common ones. If you've ever met OSS, you would know that he is whatever bougie is, it's the opposite of OSS. That's awesome. Bougie. I've got this 410 snake charmer above the back door. And we just, a snake charmer is just a little break action 410. And in the past, I've said I think it's one of the best home defense options there is, and everyone gets mad at me when I say that. But remember, home defense isn't necessarily me, the trained Marine, repelling invaders. It's my wife or my 13-year-old son shooting possums in the chicken coop. And, the trade-off, where you start slinging 5.56 around the house, and next thing you know, you've perforated every wall there is. And in this house, there's a child behind every wall. And I'm not a big fan of blowing holes. Stop blowing holes in my ship. So I still think that break action 410 is a reasonable choice for the threats we're likely to face. shirtless crackheads wandering around, possums in the chicken coop, you know, possibly occasionally a coyote. There was a bear a mile down the road a few years ago. Uh, there's hogs. Yeah, we wouldn't shoot. Obviously, you wouldn't shoot the bear or the hogs with the 410. But if you needed to, if you were if you were at the back door and you wanted to try to drive a bear off the chicken coop, maybe you do take a shot at him with the 410, close the door real quick. Who knows? Maybe it drives him off. Uh, yeah, Palmetto points out he uses his 20 gauge more on the homestead than anything else. Uh, yeah, for snakes. But how much better of a option would this 357 be? It's almost hearing safe. You can shoot it without earplugs once and not have your ears ring. I can. Uh, who saw the video of a guy shooting a black bear that broke into his house? Dean likes the 20 gauge. Wes says, I'm waiting for the 357 Supermax Magnum. In my imagination, it makes the 3030 obsolete. The 357 Supermax Magnum sounds bougie, Wes. Bougie. And for those of you who don't know, who don't keep up with our modern urban youth and their slang, bougie is a diminution of, he used an AR-15 on a black bear. Wow. Yeah, 410 slugs, they hit with authority. I am always amused by the people who tell me 410 slugs are anemic, but then they'll use any kind of pistol. Hey, buddy bear, appreciate you hanging out with us, sir. Sorry we weren't all that interesting. Yeah, but I know you got to get up early. Yeah. If you think a 410 slug is ineffective, but you're going to use any kind of a pistol, well, you're kind of not making much sense. How dare you call me young? Oh no, he's officially middle aged. All right, Night Howler. I take it back. I apologize. Bougie is a diminution of bourgeois, and if you're familiar with your Marxist theory at all, you'll know that the bourgeoisie is a French phrase. I can't remember if it originated with Marx or if it originated with the proto-socialists in France, but it's supposed to designate the hey, shalom, tradesman. It designates the what was the middle class back then. So you would be like the lawyers, the shopkeepers, yeah, the upper middle class of the 1800s. They weren't royalty, they weren't peasantry, they were bourgeois, and they were they were supposed to be the final enemies of the socialists. So the socialists were supposed to sit back and let the bourgeois destroy the royalty, but what not that they didn't call it, but nobility. They were going to let the socialists were supposed to sit back and let the bourgeois or the bourgeoisie destroy the nobility, and then the socialists were going to rise up with the I don't think they said urban. What did they say? Oh well, with the industrial peasantry. Maybe they did say. Anyway, it was industrialized peasantry, and the workers, the industrialized peasantry, were going to overthrow the bourgeoisie. So the bourgeoisie were the last stage before socialism was supposed to take over. They were the ultimate enemy, but not the primary enemy at the time. So of course, for socialists, which was like all of our elites through the 19th and 20th century, bourgeoisie or bourgeois turned into this incredible insult. If a socialist called you a bourgeoisie, then he was telling you that you were kind of petty and provincial and you had small-minded goals, and you were still oppressing people, even if it was on a lower level than the nobility had been. And they were kind of designating you as their next enemy because the nobility had been defeated, and now we were living in the tyranny. Not was it tyranny? Anyway, it was the time of the bourgeoisie, and and they were supposed to all be agitating for the uprising of the the industrial proletariat. I haven't looked at all this stuff in a while. I spent a few months a few years ago trying to get brushed up on my Marxist theory, and it's all stupid. Marxism is just ridiculously dumb, especially if you start your investigation of Marxism with Marx himself. Marx was an idiot. He was an absolute piece of trash. Uh, Wes is taking the bougie. He's owning it. Mark refused to keep a job, wouldn't work. His family was always on the verge of starvation. They were insanely impoverished. Spent about half his time working on these cockamamie ideas. They're not even sure to this day how much of Marx's ideas were Marx's ideas or were not his buddy's idea. He had this buddy who he worked hard with called Engels, and Engels was actually upper class bourgeoisie. He actually was even minor nobility. I can't remember. And so Engels was like always having to hide his connection with the radical left, and he was frequently publishing things through Marx. So we don't even know how much of Marxism is Marx and how much is Engels. But yeah, Marx stunk to high heavens. He refused to bathe. He was incredibly racist. He was just an idiot. There was not one good thing about him. Two of his daughters died in murder-suicide pacts with their husbands. Mark, he was Jewish, but he didn't know he was Jewish. He was also ragingly anti-Semitic. He hated the Jews. He didn't know that his parents had converted from Judaism before he was born. He thought he was a good German. he, he was a Jew. It was so funny. But yeah, he hated the Jews. Yeah, thought they were stupid. Thought they were. He just savaged the Jews. He was so racist that he hated Spaniards. He thought that Spaniards were because the Moorish, the Islamic conquest of Spain, hundreds of years prior. Oh, 10 tigers. That's a really good question. I looked at. I didn't read the articles, but I've been following the headlines, and I can't tell what I think about that. Uh, I am always a little concerned when the government gets involved with the free market. Not that there is a free market, but when they get involved with the market at all, the definition of fascism is the real definition of fascism when it was promulgated by Benito Mussolini. That's right, fascism is Italian. It's not even German. Uh, the whole idea, I don't remember the exact definition, but the whole idea is that it was a cooperation between the government and industry uh, to further the national aims. Uh, that's the that was what fascism was originally, which sounds a lot like socialism, which is why Nazi is shorthand for National Socialism, because you know Hitler and his buddies, and Mussolini too. Mussolini came out of socialism. They all saw themselves as socialist. Yeah, ETS is here. How you doing, sir? Uh, so our government getting expressly involved in the economy in that way, even for national defense, is concerning. Uh, yeah, I agree, Ten Tigers. You know, the left calls everybody and everything fascist. Anything they don't like is fascism. And of course, they call Trump fascist nonstop. Uh, this is the first time he's actually done something that smacks of fascism, though. Uh, it was, this is still on the bougie thing. What do you mean you're going to bed, Wes? It's like 2 hours prior to what even is out here. It's like 9 o'clock out there. You are you are bougie, going to bed at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. Dear Lord, I'm with Night Howler on this one. Uh, I will say this though: the Security 6 is also the opposite of bougie. Uh, I love my Ruger Security 6. Anyway, Wes, good night. It's good to see you, brother. I need to call you or text you, and we just need to catch up. Anyway, so yeah, the Intel thing, $9 billion is a lot of damn money. I really, really, really want to know what the payout is. You know, Trump's not perfect. He's pretty good. He doesn't too frequently do things that upset me. Obviously, the bump stock ban was worrisome. I don't quite understand Trump coin. I don't see why that was a good idea. Uh, and there's been a few other little things where I've just, I wonder why necessarily, like the airplane, the Qatari airplane. Uh, Good night, Wes. Appreciate you, brother. Uh, why, just for optics, why are you taking the airplane? Uh, hey, 10 Tigers comes up with a good question. What would you think of the government having their own ammo and weapon factory? Some other countries do it that way. Well, 10 Tigers, our country did it that way for a long time. You know, the Springfield Armory was a government firearms manufacturer for a very, very long time. The Springfield Trapdoor. MI Prepper says that he read that a 357 out of less than a 3-inch barrel is not much better than a 38 Special plus P, but much more flash and kick. I mean, I would go out on a limb and say 357 kind of is 38 Special plus P. I mean, that's where the round kind of came from. They wanted to up the power on the 38 Special, and they just needed it to not be fired in older 38 Special revolvers that couldn't handle the pressures. So they made the case longer so it wouldn't chamber in those older revolvers. That's kind of what 357 is. Period. It's more than that, obviously. It's significantly stronger. Uh, I talk too much again. So, I mean, there's precedent for there being a government armory, a government firearms manufacturer, and the Springfield Armory was in production. It was active as late as the M14. Uh, and in fact, Springfield designed the M14, which was a little bit of a travesty. Uh, and yeah, I guess I always blamed Kennedy and McNamara for the M16's failures in Vietnam, but I'm sure Springfield had something to do with it. I think that was a really good system a long time ago. Uh, I don't think it would be effective now. Because look, we can look at this stupid XM7 and see what happens when the government gets too involved in the design process for firearms. The government's just not good at stuff like this. You know, they think they are, but they're not. They're idiots. So back to the original question. I am concerned about the intel. Uh, investment, specifically because of things like the M14 in the Springfield Armory. We just have too much proof uh, that the government is incompetent. That the government just can't do anything but break things and kill people. Uh, so I am extremely skeptical that the government involvement in private industry is going to rebound to our benefit. And I'm also very worried about what comes next. Okay, they do it with Intel. What do they do next? Are they going to start buying oil companies? Government money is absolutely corrupting. When you just look at GM, when the government bought GM, and suddenly the government was appointing all the GM's board members, and the next thing you know, the damn Italians own the freaking thing. GM's wholly owned by the Italians. How the hell did that happen? The government got involved. The government just, nothing good comes from government. What is going on with this cigar? And I have the same concern about another federal armory. You know, the AR-15. Say what you want about it. I think everyone here is probably some level of AR fanboy. Uh, uh, the AR-15 was a private venture, and I think arguably one of the most $10,000 toilet seats for everyone. Probably one of the most successful rifle designs in history. Uh, Whereas the M14 was easily our least successful uh, military rifle that we've had. I would have to go back and look at some of those, and I wouldn't even say those would even count when you've got the transition from black powder to smokeless powder, when you're going from single shot muzzle loaders to metallic cartridges. Of course, there's going to be some fits and starts and some hiccups in that process. It was a major change in technology. Everyone was trying to figure out what worked and what didn't. Fine. By the time of the M14, though, I mean, we had all that knowledge and we knew what to do. The M1 carbine had been incredibly successful through. I still think, by the way, the M1 carbine is the most influential and revolutionary military long arm of the 20th century. I think the reason we have an AR-15 is because of the M1 carbine. I think the reason why the AK-47 was developed was because of the M1 carbine. You could probably convince me. I'd have to look at the dates when the Germans started working on the Sturmgewehr. Because off the top of my head, I can't remember if they had encountered the M1 carbine yet. But I wouldn't be surprised to find out if the Germans started working on the Sturmgewehr after they had encountered the M1 carbine. I think it was just a revolutionary firearm. And the only reason, in my opinion, that the Air Force even wanted the AR-15 is because they wanted a space age M1 carbine. The Air Force used the M1 carbine for a lot of stuff, and I think they just wanted something all space agey, and that's what they saw in the AR-15. And then when everyone was panickedly looking around for something that would work in Vietnam, they had this thing available to them, and we just got lucky that it was actually a really good rifle. But that's my guess. Ian McCullum might laugh at me. Yeah, let's go for veteran. The Russian concept for the AK-47 was the Sturmgewehr. You'll never ever convince me that that the AK wasn't anything more than Russians' version of Project Paperclip. They actually got the main guy who was developing the Sturmgewehr, and he actually worked really close to the armory where allegedly Kalashnikov designed the AK-47. And I don't buy it. I don't believe that this tank commander who never designed a gun before or after spontaneously and organically designed a weapon suspiciously like the German gun that they had just captured the designer of, and that they were unable to manufacture. As you remember, they they didn't have the stamping technology to make the AK-47. They had to go back to the milled receivers. The whole point of the AK-47, like the Sturmgewehr, is that it had stamped receivers that were going to be really easy and fast to manufacture once they were set up. And the Russians couldn't get the stamping technology to work. They had to go to milled receivers for like 10 years or something. I just I don't believe the Mikhail Kalashnikov miracle story. It smacks too much of. There was this whole genre of propaganda that was coming out of the communists about the unleashed potential of the worker, and how in a communist system the workers' potential would be unleashed and they would achieve all these incredible things in technology and because they were working for themselves. And so that's why they were always cheating at the Olympics so bad, because their whole shtick was that these workers have been unleashed, they're working for themselves, and so their potential is going to be completely tapped into. And so it just became absolutely necessary for them to cheat at everything, because they for their whole ideology to work, they had to. It was no different than freaking Nazism. Nazis had the same thing. There really is no difference between Hitler and Stalin, communists and Nazis. They're the same damn thing. The only difference is that the Nazis really hated Jews and believed in racial superiority. But the Russians didn't like Jews, and they believed in their ideological superiority. So the differences are minimal between these two. Horseshoe theory is real. Have y'all heard about horseshoe theory? I just ran into this recently. We've got this false idea that the political movements are on this diametrically opposed spectrum of left and right. And the farther you move down the spectrum, the farther away you get from the other side. But horseshoe theory says that the spectrum isn't a straight line, it's curved, it's a U. And the farther you move down the line, the closer you actually end up coming to the other side. And I am Palmetto says that shit is a circle. I am a big proponent of horseshoe theory. The farther you move left, the more you look like. In fact, I don't even think there is a right wing. Anything the left says is right wing is just a different kind of leftist. Look at Wes is still here. He's still on the bougie thing too. He's not going to let that go. Comrade Zach, what the motherland said happened. What the motherland said happened. Individualism is a capitalist concept, and we don't have those. And I'm really leaving now. All right, Wes. As long as you can deal with us not spouting Marxist propaganda. Yeah, that's the other thing, Dean. We're allegedly in such this right-wing moment, and Donald Trump was the first president ever elected to his first term believing in gay marriage. Every other president we've ever had elected prior to Trump thought marriage should only be between a man and a woman, including Obama. And suddenly this right-wing fascist that we have now, he's a firm believer in gay marriage. We live in clown world. None of it makes sense. It's not supposed to make sense. But anyway, so yeah, I don't buy that the AK-47 is. I don't buy any Russian explanation for the AK. I hope I didn't lose Lance Corporal Veteran. uh, but now he is right. I'm sorry, Lance Corporal Veteran. If you're still here, let me back up. You are right in that the Russians thought the AK-47 was going to be their new submachine gun. They were going to replace, I believe, the Papasha, PPSH, and they just called it the Papasha, I think, which was kind of a cool machine. If you ever get a chance to look into it, Forgotten Weapons, of course, has some stuff on it, and it was chambered in 7.62 by 25, so it was more than, 7.62 by 25 is kind of a hot little pistol round, and so it was a little bit more than a submachine gun, but it was less than a rifle. Had a real high rate of fire. Had some really high capacity magazines. Some drums. So you are absolutely right when you said that the Soviets thought they had a submachine gun on their hands, and it turns out they had just, fielded a groundbreaking new battle rifle. Because it was groundbreaking. It was absolutely the 30 carbine was the original 300 blackout. It was country before country was cool. I was country when country wasn't cool. We just lost a lot of viewers all at once. We were at 29 and we just dropped down to 20. That must have been Wes S. and all his Russian chat bots in here trying to sway the chat towards communism. What did I miss? I missed some stuff. Wasn't it designed to be carried by tank crews to open hatch and rain hell on enemies? That is very possible. No, and that Lance Corporal Veterans does agree they got the idea from the Sturmgewehr, but construction internals of the AK-47 was more like a Garand. Yeah, no, yeah, I think I've read that too, Lance Corporal Veteran, that the AK-47 is very much much more of a mashup of the Garand and the Sturmgewehr. I don't know in what elements. I think maybe I heard that the trigger mechanism was much more Garandish. And I've also read and believe, I don't doubt this at all, that the AK was a much better rifle than the Sturmgewehr. So I don't want to act like, it was just an exact copy or anything. Oh, Alex was watching The Fat Electrician. Yeah, he's much more entertaining than me. If you keep saying communism, the Fat Electrician is going to show up behind you. He's pretty funny. He's pretty funny. But anyway, where were we? Oh, gosh. I got derailed all the way back at letting, perfect be the enemy of good enough. I think that Rossi 92, that R92, it might be the best all-around choice for the main go-to rifle for my homestead. I can get my wife and my sons trained up on it. They can shoot it. I don't have to worry about the worst possible side effects of misses. It'll reach out to all corners of this place that can be reached from the house. Night Howler had to charge his phone. Night Howler, you've missed a bunch. We've gone all over the world since then. We've been to Germany and Finland and Russia and World War II and Robert McNamara. We've discussed political horseshoe theory and the origins of communism. It has been wide ranging. It always is with these men. God, this cigar is all screwed up. Yeah. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to get everyone competent on this Rossi. I'm going to find a place to store it where it's safe and cared for. I'm not just going to put it over the back door. That snake charmer, yeah, that snake charmer's over the back door, and I don't care nothing about it. Incidentally, it's a Rossi too. Coincidentally, how about that? And it just sits up there and it rusts, and I pull it down every once in a while and make sure it's functioning, but I don't care about it. Yeah, political horseshoes. What do you think of the Circuit Judge or Home Defender 410 with 3-inch PDX rounds for urban home defense? Got me a couple of bad shoulders for thinking about it. I don't think you can ever go wrong with the 410 in a short range setting, especially now. Did you say Judge or Circuit Judge? You said Judge. I'm not a big fan of pistols of any kind for home defense. I want something with a stock and a little bit of a barrel that's going to be a little easier to aim. Uh, so I think the Circuit Judge is the stocked version. Ooh, Night Howler's moving to West Virginia. West Virginia is one of the places I would like to move. So I wouldn't want to Judge in the pistol version. Okay, so the Home Defender has an 18-inch barrel and a 4-end, but no stock. I don't see what's wrong with that. Oh, 13-inch. Sorry, my eyes aren't great. Ethanica Satori, if you're talking about me, I live in a very wooded environment, yeah. Lots of trees, especially in all the Southeast. I mean, from Texas, if you go from Texas, oh hell, the whole East Coast of the United States is just massive forest. If you get down in like Atlanta, is all the way down into like the middle of the city is still. They'll have black bears wander up and show up in downtown Atlanta sometimes because there's just trees everywhere. I've seen coyotes down there in the middle of the city, and I'll be honest with you, I would still want a stock, even if it's just a pistol brace. I mean, that sounds like an interesting option, especially if it's got a foregrip, because it'll point pretty instinctively. Hey, strap. So I don't see what the problem was. I would still want a stock, but I think that would be a great, especially because the Judge is a double action. I've never shot a Judge. I bet that trigger is like 20 pounds because it's got to spin that giant cylinder. I'm being facetious, of course. And is that 5 rounds? I think the Judge is 5 rounds. So if I had 5 rounds of 410 in a decent sized barrel with a little stock and some form of repeater, double action, I think that'd be fantastic. Oh, Night Howler, are you actually in Georgia? Yeah, Georgia was hot, but before you go moving north, I am possibly the opposite of a monk. I have, Athanica, I have 16 children, so I'm not a monk. Hopefully, by this age, I have gained a little bit of wisdom, but I don't know if I'm as wise as a monk. That's very flattering, though. Thank you. Uh, yeah, no stock because of your bum shoulder. That is interesting. Uh, hmm. Yeah. Anytime there's a disability, sort of. Oh, you're not in Georgia. Okay. Any any compromise you have to make for that is worth it. You're right. I mean, because anything's better than nothing. And if you can't do it, if you can't train with it, if you can't use it, if you have to worry about using it, if you're going to flinch or hesitate, then absolutely you make whatever compromise isn't the right word. Accommodation. You make whatever accommodation you have to make at that point. And I'm sorry. I think 410 is an excellent idea for home defense. It's not going to blow through walls, or at least if it does, when it gets to the other side, it's not going to be just devastating. It's going to be highly effective across the room. If you need to reach out across the yard, it'll do it. Uh, it's going to be light. It's easy to train with. If you have to go to court and defend your actions, it's not, you know, you don't look like some crazed soldier of fortune wannabe. The only downside to 410, in my opinion, is how damn expensive it is. If you go compare 410 to 12 gauge round for round, 410's like 3 times as expensive as 12 gauge. It's ridiculous. Uh, but that's my only uh, complaint with 410, really. For home defense, I think it's an excellent choice, especially in an urban environment. You know, I don't understand these guys who are, there's some really, really good, knowledgeable shooters who advocate for AR-15 for home defense. I think Reed Hendricks does, and 410 in buckshot or slug. I don't think it matters either one. You take your pick. Both is, if you think you might have to reach out a little bit farther, you probably want the slug. Uh, but I don't think you go wrong at all. Yeah. Wow, Athanica, where do you live? He says guns are banned in my country for civilians. What country is that? The last name Satori. Night Howler, remember Soldier of Fortune? I loved Soldier of Fortune. I still like Soldier of Fortune. Uh, but even back then, Athenica's in China. That's cool. A lot of interesting firearms came out of China. Oh, look at the price of 4570. I bet. I can only imagine. I'm sure that's. I mean, hell, just the amount of brass that goes into that. You know, brass is $1 a pound right now. I bet there's significant amounts of value just in the weight of the brass itself. Mm. Even when Soldier of Fortune was at its height, and I was in my early to late teens, it's when I read it the most. Even back then, I was like, okay, these guys are they're full of a lot of shit, but boy, are they entertaining. I loved Soldier of Fortune, but I did not buy all of it. But I did enjoy the issues, and they had a lot of fun stuff in there, and they did not care. Uh, okay, Strapped is saying something interesting here. 9mm PCC is my home defense. 12 gauge short shells. I love 12 gauge shorties. The one argument against 410 these days might be 12 gauge shorties. I keep saying shorties. on my AR-15 for oh the AR-15 AR-10 are for hunting and sport shooting and everything. He says. Night Howler's home defense is AR-15. Keep 2 full mags of 45 grain frangibles. Interesting choice. They are expensive too. Yes, they are. The frangible, if I was going to use the AR-15 for home defense, it would be with frangible ammunition. That would be the only way I would feel comfortable with it. That being said, I do keep my AR-15 handy with my militia loadout in case I ever do need to go defend my faith, family, freedoms. Obviously, that's what I'm grabbing as I run out the door. But if I'm just defending the house from the types of threats I'm likely to have to defend the house for, I'm not grabbing the AR-15. First off, all of my AR-15s are 20-inch barreled at least, and they maximize the effectiveness of the 5.56 round. And all of my 5.56 is full metal jacket, so it's all got the most penetration possible. Anything I miss, every round I miss with goes through every wall of this house. Seriously, this is a little facetious, but if I stood at one end of this house and shot with the AR-15, how many walls do I go through? Probably a lot. I probably go through a lot of walls. If I lived in a suburban environment, what's the chance that I miss and it exits my house and goes into the neighbor's house? Again, why do we have guns? We have guns to protect. If our guns that we're supposed to use for protection get used for destruction, then the whole purpose of us having guns has been defeated. Okay, Night Howler. Now, I think Night Howler is talking about the frangible, and he says that it only went through an inch of sheetrock. Or did you say plywood? Drywall. Yeah, half-inch drywall is basically defeated after 2 layers. So I think he's talking about the frangibles. Mark has the Turkish Mac 5. MP5 is really good for home defense. MP5 is really good for anything that a PCC would be good for. Although I didn't get to shoot it, but this weekend I got to hold a Ruger PC charger, or was it an LC? I don't remember. But I was very, very, very pleased with how that one felt. Yeah, Alex is saying it makes sense. I carry a rifle in public, sometimes urban for work, so I guess I have a different comfort level with it. Every round is a huge liability. If I'm outside and I can carry a full-size rifle, I will always want the full-size rifle, every time. If I think I need a firearm and I'm outside, I want it to be an AR-15. Even over, say, a PCC. And I like PCs a lot. But if I'm in a close-in environment, it's just a what-if system. I have the weapon because of what if. Then I'm probably making some compromises on, absolute end user. How's that for a euphemism? Lethality, and I'm going for something that's more portable. With a more proportional round. The only absolute lethality is not the only consideration. Because if absolute lethality was the only consideration, then none of us would be talking about anything less than a BAR. The BAR is like the least tactical thing you could have that would apply in most situations. What if you got to take out a vehicle? Well, I love the AR-15, but it's not like going to be incredibly effective against a vehicle. Uh, there's a cigar here. uh, so even when we're talking about the AR-15, we're talking about compromises, serious compromises, right? I mean, uh, I love the AR. I think the 5.56 is an excellent compromise, but it is absolutely a compromise. If we made sure every business owner was armed, would there be less crime or more violent crime? I mean, obviously, I think everyone here is going to say that an armed society is a polite society. I'd be interested to hear what Athanica Satori had to say about it. Uh, living in a very different culture, a very, very different culture. I've been watching a lot of these European reaction videos here lately, where Europeans react to videos about America, and it was interesting to see how they reacted to our wildlife, things that I don't even think is that big of a deal, like coyotes. And they were seeing videos about coyotes and like these things are roaming around America and we're still a little bit of a dangerous environment just naturally. Sure, we're not a frontier anymore, but we still have large predators that are in most areas. Uh, Black bears. We all act like black bears aren't a big deal, and they're not really. But at the same time, these are 350-pound apex predators. Even if you're talking about the smaller varieties of black bear, it's not unusual for a boar. Cows scare me. I saw another video recently, Mark, that pointed out that cows kill more people than almost any other animal in North America. Uh, But we still have lethal animals, large apex predators just wandering around. Bears, mountain lions. Obviously, they're more out west, although there are some down in Florida. Uh, Snakes. We've got lethal snakes. Uh, even some things like elk and moose are out there can kill you. I mean, every few years I hear about someone out in the woods that got mauled by a whitetail of all things. Uh, we got the wild boars running around. Uh, Palmetto's seen mountain lion. Yeah, Palmetto. The people who spend a lot of time in the woods around here swear to God we have mountain lions. You'll never convince them we don't. I tend to trust them more than I trust the DNR people. I have never seen the evidence of them out there, but I mean, people I trust just swear by their mother's souls that they're out there. So, Mark's got them in Iowa. So, yeah, we can. We actually do live in an environment where it's not just like this ego thing. Uh, we actually do need guns just in our environment. And then, of course, set aside the true threat of the government, uh, who is the real predator. Uh, yeah, Palmetto's seen them. I mean, I believe everyone should be armed in every country. You're not a citizen if you're not armed. I won't go so far as to say a slave, but you're certainly at the mercy of everyone above you. So forget the wildlife. Even if we all lived in concrete jungles, I would say we all should be armed. This is why I used to open carry and still do open carry for the most part, because I think you should just assume every man is armed. If you see a man that's unarmed, you should assume he's concealed. Uh, So yeah, I think every business should have a gun in there. You should assume at any time that if you really want to be incredibly stupid, that you might have to suffer the consequences of your own stupidity. You know, and you think about all the tragedies with uh, that happen. Let's just look at like the Pulse nightclub shooting. If just one of those damn bouncers, assuming they had bouncers, or bartenders had been armed, how many lives would have been saved? I think a lot of these things would be forestalled and we've never heard about them. Some guy's gonna come through the door with a gun, someone's gonna pull their gun, and he's just gonna turn and run because most of these things happen in disarmed areas, gun-free zones. Why do shootings happen in schools? Because no one else is armed. No one's armed there. You're already a coward. You're already wanting to hurt people. You're not gonna go. Yeah, look, these mass shooters. Where has there never been a mass shooting? A gun show. You never hear about mass shootings at gun shows. They don't happen. And you have thousands of guns and tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition, and all these weirdos from every walk of life, and no one ever gets shot at a gun show. Gun shows should be just killing fields, if what the left has to say about guns is true, right? You obviously there have been some mass shootings on military bases, but what we forget about military bases is that for the vast majority of the time, military bases are gun-free zones. The guns are all locked up in bomb-proof bunkers, and the ammunition is locked up in if you've ever seen an ammo dump on a military base, it's unbelievable, the security. You can't get in there. There's never heard of a mass shooting when the soldiers and Marines are armed. I've been in training areas where you had 500 20-year-olds all with machine guns and massive amounts of ammunition, and we never once got into to a firefight with each other. There was never once a mass shooting. All these 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds walking around with machine guns, missiles. I've been in scenarios where I had a missile, and everyone around me had machine guns and M16A2s and M9s, and we were all carrying full combat loads of ammunition, and no one got shot. Everyone is hyper respectful when everyone else is armed. And that's the demographic who should be most likely to get into a firefight. These are young men with no college education. If anyone was ever going to have a mass shooting, these are supposed, and primarily white, because I always blame white guys. Although, the dirty little secret, dun dun dun, you ready? They're about to dump my live stream on me. The vast majority of school shootings, and I think even the vast majority of most mass shootings, are done by, let's be very judicious in our language. They are done by men with questionable commitment to masculinity. So the Pulse nightclub shooting was done by a man who just frequented that club. He was gay. It was a gay guy who did the Pulse nightclub shooting. Columbine. Those two were alleged. Those two claimed in their letters to have been having a sexual relationship with each other. The self-reported evidence by I can't remember which one of those guys it was in his journals is that they were gay. They were having sex. The kid in Texas, Uvalde, he was wearing not necessarily when the shooting happened, but he was known to wear a mascara. Okay, maybe he was just a goth idiot. But either way, the guy was known to wear makeup. Uh, the the guy who shot up Gabby Giffords in Arizona, a lot of circumstantial evidence that he was gay. Uh, the guy who shot up the church in Charlotte and Charleston, he was gay. Uh, the the Sandy Hook shooter, uh, apparently he was very. He had, if you ever saw a picture of him, he was this little skinny, just weaselly looking little piece of trash whose room was filled to the brim with muscle building magazine. He very likely gay. Uh, just time and time and time again. I've even heard leftists uh, quietly admit that about 2/3 of all known mass shooters have questionable sexual choices. And then, of course, yeah, most of them are on some kind of psych. Yeah, the Nashville shooter was just straight up trans. Uh, and a lot of them are on psych meds too. But I think that goes along with, the gender issues. Hey, Landon, shalom, sir. Uh, I'm not saying it's not correlated. It is definitely correlated. I don't know if it's as causative as just the moral degradation that comes along with those types of sexual choices. There's a reason why the Bible tells us that you're taking the corruption into your flesh, because you're literally corrupting your flesh, and your mind is part of your flesh. Uh, so when they tell us that, oh, we'd be better off with a bear than we would with a man, you gotta understand they're basing that off of yeah, the kid that shot Trump was effeminate. Oh, that kid who shot up the parade in Illinois. I can't remember if it was a 4th of July parade or something, but he got up on a building and was shooting up some kind of parade. He was absolutely struggling with his sexual identity. Uh, that kid was a piece of work. Uh, so that's that's the truth of mass shooters. My daughters are 6 and 4, and I'm praying we can get this country on a better track. This is what happens when you remove our country faith uh, out of our government. Absolutely. So I have a theory, and it's not original to me by any stretch of the imagination. So I shouldn't say I have a theory. There is a theory uh, that the number one intellectual distinction in almost every ideology is a belief in uh, original sin versus a moral perfectibility. Uh, so, and most of you know this. I've probably talked about this before, so I'm probably boring you. Please forgive me if I'm boring you. But if you go to any opposing ideology, like we always ask, why do these wild radical leftists get along with Muslims so well? Because you would think that they're diametrically opposed to each other. Radical leftists love anything gay, and Muslims are known to throw gay people off of buildings. But what they believe in very strongly, what's at the base of both of their ideologies that allows them to cooperate, is that they both reject an idea of original sin. Uh, Islam teaches that people are born morally perfect because they say they're created by God. Obviously, we believe that too, but they say God's not capable of creating anything that's not morally perfect. It's not perfect, period. And so all people are born morally perfect, and all sin originates from external temptation. Uh, this is You can't understand Islam if you don't accept this fact. Well, this is the base claim of humanism and all the humanistic based ideologies is that people are born. Most humanists would tell you that humans are born morally neutral, and they act on rational self interest, and so when people do things bad, it's because the incentives have been structured to make them do things bad. That's why, for humanists, crime is a mental health issue, you know, because people themselves are at worst morally neutral and usually, morally some form of good. So Islam and leftists can get along very, very well because their solutions to every problem are the same thing. If you remove the negative thing that you think is leading everyone to moral turpitude, then you can achieve moral perfection. Muslims are going to want to remove any and all temptation. That's why women are covered from head to toe. You can only see their eyes because if a Muslim man is being tempted sexually, it's not because he has something broken in him. Not that he has any original sin. It's that some external force is leading him towards that temptation. The great advantage of Christianity and Christian-based cultures is that we believe that we have this duality where we have this drive, this desire towards the perfect. We desire to achieve our divinely appointed perfection, but we have this internal flaw that pulls us towards debasement, what we would call sin in Christianity. And so we have this drive for perfection that the humanists might recognize, but we also have this draw towards perversion. And the societies that function the best are the societies that punish imperfection and incentivize that drive towards perfection, so that an incentive to achieve, to aspire, to take big risks, and then you also have a forgiveness for your failures. So, like in Islam, if you failed, it's because you were there. There was some problem in you, or Allah willed your failure. And so there's an incentive in Islam not to fail at all because failure is a sign of I don't know how they would describe it, but when you fail in Islam, it means really, really bad things. And when you fail in a Christian-based society, well, of course, because you are always going to fail. You have this. 10 Tigers wants to start a fight. Okay, we'll deal with that in just a second. 10 Tigers. You were always going to fail. You have a part of yourself that you can't fix. That's irrevocably broken. Yet you still have this push towards achievement. Yes, you're going to fail, but you're not allowed to stay at that failure. You're not allowed to wallow in that failure. You're required to overcome that failure. I believe with all my heart it's the big advantage of the West. It's why I will go there with you. I like arguments and things. 10 Tigers. When I say you want to fight, I just mean you want to have fun and whatnot. But yeah, I believe if we look at any opposing ideologies, at the base of that will be the idea of original sin on some level. Like even the Greeks, the pagan Greeks had an idea of original sin in what they called hubris. And that's why, Greek culture, even though classical Greek culture is the farthest thing from Christian that is possible to be, It's as pagan as it was possible to be. It's the prototypical pagan society. We still will talk about the foundations that our cultures have in Greek culture, because they had a belief in an original sin of a type, and why Islam, even though it had actually grew up in heavily Greek influenced areas, in Turkey and the Middle East and everything, where Greek culture through the Byzantines had a strong influence. They don't draw any connections to it. They don't feel like they're based in it at all, because they're diametrically opposed to it. They don't believe in an original sin. Okay, I don't remember how we got off on that. Can a woman lead a church? Oh God, Strap, I'm so sorry. Like that is one of my biggest fears, is skunks. I hate that. Oh, that smell is awful. Someone's saying something about Stoicism. Stoicism and Christianity do seem to have some overlap, though. Absolutely. They absolutely do. I don't know where the Romans would fall on the original sin issue. The Romans considered themselves a continuation of Greek culture, or a refinement of Greek culture. She heard you talking about the skunk. So my guess is that they would have some idea of hubris as well, but I actually don't know that. That's a really good point. But I would say that we're only tangentially connected to the Romans. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. I'd have to think about that one. Okay, can a woman lead a church? I would absolutely say not. I go so far as to say that Paul teaches pretty explicitly that women are not even allowed to speak in the what I would call the assembly. What we call church is just an old English word that means assembly, which is which comes from the Greek ekklesia, and is the Greek word that's used in the Old Testament. The Hebrew word would be, it gets like congregation. But basically what it means is whenever God's people are assembled in a group to do something in keeping with our religion. So when we say church, what we're saying is assembly. And when the believers are assembled together in some sort of religious endeavor, women aren't even allowed to speak, according to the Apostle Paul. They're to remain silent. And he says explicitly that he does not allow women to teach men, even teach men. And I would say that is religious thing. I mean, obviously, your older sister can teach you to drive. I mean, it's not talking about that, but. So, no, I do not believe that women can lead a church. By definition, the Christian church is organized under, Mark even has a better out. Although, Mark, I will say, you guys give nuns way more leeway than I would ever give any woman. I have definitely seen instances where faithful Catholic men will allow themselves to be instructed by nuns, which I would still say would violate Paul's restrictions on that. So no, women can't lead churches. Women can't be preachers. I don't think women can deliver prophetic messages in the assembly. I believe women can deliver prophetic messages one-on-one, but not in the assembly. Oh wow, a show where someone shoots a pistol right-handed, but rifle left-handed. So I wonder if he's got a mismatched eye dominance. where he's right-handed but left eye dominant, or right-handed and left eye dominant. So I have that. I'm right-handed but I'm left eye dominant. But I shoot both rifle and pistol right-handed, so that doesn't make sense why that would cause that. There's got to be some reason why shooting pistol left-handed, and God, that just seems unnatural. Strapped is got a cross-eye dominance too. I don't remember the official term for it. Yeah, I don't know what she's barking at. She's mostly Pyrenees too. She's Pyrenees and lab mix, so she has the Pyrenees instincts. The Pyrenees is stronger than the lab in her. So I'm sure a leaf fell in the forest somewhere, and she is voicing her displeasure that anything at all moved within her area of operations. I love those Pyrenees. They're great dogs. If you can't ignore the barking, they are not for you, because they bark all night long, and I like it because I have not seen a coyote or even heard a coyote near here since we got Pyrenees. They despise coyotes. Uh, uh, oh, she's done now. She did all that barking. She walked out to the screen door, gave it a few more repetitions just to make sure everybody knows she's still here, and then she just walked right back in. She's a nice big dog. I like her. Uh, she's a pretty good dog. But I want to get another male Pyrenees. Our old male died. He's gone. He wandered off into the woods and died a dignified death somewhere. And by dignified death, it means I didn't have to dig the giant ass hole that would have taken to bury him. I was very grateful to him that she's right at 100 pounds. I think when we got her fixed, she was still pretty young, and she was already 100 pounds then, and she's only gotten bigger since then. So she's probably 110, 115. She's not a massive, massive dog. She's not like one of those cane corsos or anything. But she's a nice, good-sized dog. Yeah. In fact, this retreat I was at, that's a good-sized German Shepherd. This retreat I was at this weekend is, well, I think I said this earlier, was centered around a patriarchal, trying to implement a patriarchal Christianity in our lives and houses, and then later on, by extension, the world around us. I would go so far as to say most of the men at this retreat were, and it was families, it wasn't just men, but it was families. But most of the men at the retreat would have probably, even if they didn't know this phrase, they would have ascribed to some form of dominion theology that would say, that a rightly organized Christian society would strive for dominance. I'm interested by how many men in this stream have big dogs. I think that's one of the characteristics of men like us, is we like big dogs. Oh no, 10 Tigers. I have never. That's not true. I was about to tell a lie. I was about to say I've never voted for a woman. But I have. I voted for Kelly Loeffler in the last, one of whichever Senate race that was, where the damn Democrat won. But no, I agree. We should not have women. I go so far as to say women shouldn't be allowed to vote. I don't believe women should vote. There are some women who can be trusted to vote, but they are so few and far between, and there are so many of the other kind that I don't think women should be allowed to vote. However, I also don't believe most men should be allowed to vote. I am deeply skeptical of mass so-called democracy. Uh, if I was able to set up my perfect world, the only people who would be allowed to vote would be Christian men who've had a Christian son who has in turn had a son. So uh, Christian grandfathers with a male line. Uh, Swamp Yankee has a Pyrenees Lab pit mix. That's probably an interesting dog. He says, fat dogs. MI Prepper likes Starship Trooper as a model for citizenship. This strap only makes girls. I like Starship Troopers. I like the book. I like the movie. Uh, the book obviously is much better for how to organize a society. Uh, yeah, and Palmetto's doing his part. I think Palmetto's got what? You've got your 7th child on the way, or your 8th child? Palmetto is definitely doing his part. I don't like the idea of like, oh, he had the 7th child. I'm sorry. I feel like you told me that, and maybe I forgot, or maybe you just didn't tell me she'd been born. Congratulations if I didn't say it when she was born. Daughters are a wonderful thing. Yeah, the Starship Troopers book is an interesting blueprint for how to set up a society. It still allows women into leadership, but it would greatly restrict them. If you set up a society according to the lines of Starship Troopers, you would still have a largely male-dominated public sphere because it's based off of military service. The problem with the Starship Troopers model is for it to really be effective, you almost have to be in continual combat. And that was the setting of the Starship Troopers universe, as they were in this almost unending combat against these alien bugs. Damn it. I don't like tests because I know a lot of really bad, stupid people who can pass tests. Yeah, U.S. history looks like it fits the bill. I don't like a poll tax or a property standard because I've known a lot of really stupid, bad people who own property, and I've known a lot of really good, smart men who didn't. I think the only way that you can get most of the good voters and the fewest of the bad voters. Yeah, MI Prepper. Far better shower scenes in that movie than when I was in. Obviously, as a Christian nationalist, I believe only Christians should be allowed to vote, period. And then the best way to assure you've got the best possible pool of voters is older men who've survived long enough to learn a thing or two. And then when you've got a son and a grandson, and when you've got a Christian son, so you have been able to sell your culture down a generation, and you still have skin in the game. Even though you're older and you're going to die soon, your name is going to survive. You still have a stake in the future of that culture. So I think with that model, you get the largest pool of the best voters. Still not going to be perfect. Still going to have a lot of stupid people doing a lot of stupid things. But that gets you the closest to the best possible voting pool. Franchised. And by that standard, I would not be able to vote yet because while I'm a Christian man who has Christian sons and I do have grandchildren, I don't have any grandsons through my sons yet. I will at some point. Yeah, so Mark will get to vote, but I wouldn't yet. So at some point, one of my 8 sons is going to have a son. It is mathematically very, very likely, statistically speaking, at some point. But I wouldn't be allowed to vote yet in my system, for whatever that's worth. I need to get on my sons. I have 5 grandchildren, but they're all through my daughters, which is, I mean, they're still my grandchildren and I love them, but they wouldn't meet the criteria for my system of voting. So my eldest son is 26 or about to be 26. So it's time for him to get a move on. And then the next son after that is 21. And he's got a little old girl he's pretty serious about. So I would imagine that's my best next chance would be those 2. We'll see, though. And then after that, it straps back. After that, I've got a little bit of a wait because the next son is 14. Or no, 16. I'm sorry. The next son after that is 16. And then 14, 12, 10, 5. And then the baby is 6 months. So I need one of these older 2. If you're listening, to get on the ball here and enfranchise me. I need a grandson with my last name. I do have grandsons. They're just not, through my sons. They're through 2 of my beautiful daughters. I've got 2 grandsons I have 3 grandsons, and a granddaughter and a granddaughter on the way. So I count the baby as soon as I know there's a pregnancy. That for me, that child exists from the moment of conception. So as soon as someone tells me they're pregnant, I count that child. Because even if something tragic and awful happened, I would still count that child because it was a child that existed. Just because I didn't look it in its face doesn't mean it's not real. There's billions and billions and billions of people I've never looked in the face who are very, very, very real. Yeah, I'm older than you and don't have kids. Yeah, I would count adoption, by the way. I should say this, that I would count adoption as long as it happened. 10 Tigers asked the same question. I would count adoption as long as it happened, say, before 12. As long as you had significant amounts of input into that boy's life, where you proved that you were able to not only live this life, but live it well enough that someone else was wanting to follow your example. I wouldn't want some 75-year-old man adopting a 55-year-old man just so he could get the right to vote. It's type of because someone would absolutely do that if you. So yeah, I would absolutely count adoption. Adoption is absolutely a Christian concept. Undeniably a part of the faith. 100% adoption would count. And look, when I institute this system, I'm not saying that someone who doesn't meet those criteria is not worthy of voting. I'm not saying you don't have value. I'm not saying that you wouldn't be good voting. And by the way, also, I'm not saying that you wouldn't be able to run for office. I'm just saying you wouldn't be able to vote. I'm just saying that, in my opinion, that system gives us the best all-around pool of voters. Yes, we absolutely would be excluding some valuable voters. I would be excluding myself, and I think I'm a valuable voter, and I vote every election. I mean, I don't think this is something that we should be trying to institute in our private lives. My wife votes. I take my wife to vote every year. You know, and every election she goes with me. We try to vote together. So even though I think women shouldn't have the right to vote, the fact that they do means that we need all the good women we can to vote. So like I'm not saying that any of this should be instituted now. I'm saying that if I could wave a magic wand and pick the what I think the system that would be the most likely to give us the best results consistently, uh, that would be it. That would be it. I'm sure y'all have heard the old joke that when Republicans die, their last wish is that their friends and family don't allow them to vote Democrat. You put it in your will. Now that I'm dead, please make sure I don't vote Democrat. So I don't think it would be like expressly discriminatory against gays, but I think it would absolutely weed a lot of them out. Uh, Obviously, of course, then we would have to argue about can a gay man be a Christian, and I think I have to come down on the side that it is possible for a gay man to be a Christian, but he would have to. Okay, so let me go a little bit step farther. I don't believe that there's such a thing as gay men. There's men who do gay things. You know, gay is as gay does. If you don't do gay, you're not gay. Uh, I'm not that interested in people's desires. I frequently find myself desiring to beat people half to death. That doesn't mean I'm you know, a murderer. It means I have unhealthy desires that I have to overcome. So I don't even necessarily accept the category of gay. I don't believe that you're born gay or that you're genetically destined to be gay. I believe male sexuality itself is almost infinitely corruptible. Hey, black hole, how you doing, sir? And most men can be corrupted sexually in some direction or another if they allow them. We all have the ability to go to some level of darkness if we don't check ourselves. And I don't think there's too many honest men who would deny that. I think we've all at some point caught our thoughts going somewhere they didn't belong and had from of some topic or another. Uh, uh, yeah, 10 Tigers. I don't. So 10 Tigers says, I think using your criteria, you accept that some good people would be left out. Absolutely, undoubtedly. Like right now, I'm left out. I think an IQ test would do about the same thing. I disagree. Uh, Einstein had a remarkably high IQ. He was a terrible person. Stephen Hawking had an incredibly high IQ, but he's one of the last people in the world I'd ever want to vote. Bill Maher is an incredibly intelligent man. He's probably got an extremely high IQ. I don't want him voting. Bill Clinton had a remarkable IQ. Uh, and that's the other good question, Dean. Who would be administering the IQ test? What we're measuring with IQ tests is pretty subjective in some instances. Uh, I get what you're saying. You're saying that a smart person can see reason. A smart person can be persuaded by the correct types of arguments and the correct types of evidence. Uh, but all the evidence we have is that smart people can also be incredibly corrupted. I mean, if we look at the academia, if we look at our colleges, they're peopled almost entirely with those with above average IQs who are utterly and completely deceived, and themselves actively deceptive. AI should take over then. Interesting you should say that. I've just been playing with AI for the first time over the last couple weeks. No, I'm sorry, days. I'm sorry, the last 2 days. In fact, when I get done with this live stream, I'm probably going to get back on there. I'm in part of a small online community that has a large amount of backlog discussion boards on this forum that's existed for a long time and has a lot of content. And so the leadership, you know, got this AI chatbot, they're calling it, and hey, Matthew works at Stanford and works with many stupid smart people. Matthew, one of my favorite podcasts I listen to is out of Stanford, out of something called the Clayman Institute, and it's these two people. I think the name of the podcast is. I'm sorry, I don't think the name of the podcast is In Bed with the Right, and it's a woman named Mara Dunnigan and a German guy named his name escapes me. But they're incredibly smart people. They're incredibly high IQs who just say the dumbest shit. I mean, they're just idiots. All of their observations, all of their conclusions, all of their everything they say is just batshit insane. But they're incredibly intelligent people and very, very interesting to listen to. But yeah, they're out of Stanford. Matthew is at the Stanford Linear Accelerator. How about that? Is that one of the ones where they're looking for quarks and all that, where they're crashing things into each other to see what Adrian Dobb. Thank you, 10 Tigers. Mara Dunnigan and Adrian Dobb. Fascinating. Oh, wow, Matthew is. He's doing the real deal, whether the accelerator takes subatomic, or not, maybe not subatomic, but microscopic particles, maybe just subatomic. I guess it would have to be subatomic. And they crash them into each other at really high speeds, and they try to see what parts are left over. And they're kind of sorting through all these collisions to see what parts are still there after these collisions. I am convinced, and Matthew, maybe you can back me up on this or tell me I'm stupid, is that we are going to find out that there is this whole nother level of subatomic particles that the subatomic particles we know of are built up of. Work on equipment in the 2.5-mile tunnel underground. We live in an age of wonders. It is just amazing the things we can do. 2.5-mile tunnel underground where we shoot things, subatomic particles at each other and explode them. Oh, Matthew says we already know this. I'm way behind. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Matthew. I guess that's what quarks are. Of course, who knows how far behind quarks are? That could be 1970s terminology. I could be completely. That's what happens when you're self-educated, Okay, what did Anita say? Only been here a few minutes, but I lean Quaker before Fox and his passivity due to, that would be Matthew Fox of the Fox's Martyr fame, I believe, Anita, due to being labeled seditious. So Ann Hutchinson and Mary Dyer gals, I don't mind listening to, but they're few. So Ann Hutchinson, I don't know Mary Dyer, but Ann Hutchinson, if I remember correctly, she got run out of Massachusetts for something that they deemed heretical, and I don't remember what it was. And if I remember correctly, she moved north and helped establish Maine. Am I getting any of this right, Anita? You have to tell us who Mary Dyer is. I can't remember her. And I don't know what Menlo Park is unless that's Stanford. Wasn't Menlo Park where Thomas Edison Oh, Menlo Park is Stanford. Okay. So what was Thomas Edison's place? It was something park too. Okay, MacArthur was highly intelligent, but he wasn't a candy ass. No, MacArthur. Look, I'm a Marine. I have my problems with MacArthur. Uh, he ordered the Marines left behind in the Philippines to surrender, and then they were subjected to the Bataan Death March. Whereas he should have unleashed. It's the only Marines in history to ever surrender, and they were doing it following the orders of an Army general. Yes, there is some inter-service rivalry there. Palmetto, if you're still in the chat, I don't want to hear about it. And he should have told those Marines to go on a guerrilla campaign. They would have been far better off than they would have gone on that Bataan Death March. But yeah, I know MacArthur's a good general, and it's a little unfair for me to blame the Bataan Death March on him, because who could have predicted that, right? Still, it was a little galling to have our unbroken history of never surrendering broken. No, I'm completely good with D-Day, Palmetto. I don't have any problems with D-Day. Also, it's not true that there were no Marines present, because the British Royal Marines were there. Ha! There is a Menlo Park, New Jersey. That may have been where Thomas Edison's lab was. Also may not have been. I may have been completely making that up. I may be confusing Stanford with Thomas Edison's lab. I have a bad habit of making things up in my mind. I believe them, and then I find out later they were completely false. But just to throw Palmetto Paratrooper a bone, whatever my beef is with MacArthur, Eisenhower was probably the greatest man of the 20th century, the most indispensable man of the 20th century, the man without whom the entire century would have been completely different. Yeah, one day I want to figure out the truth about Tesla, because there's so much myth built up around him. But boy, he sure does seem like he was an exceptional thinker. And like, I think Einstein's a total fraud. I don't have anything to base that on other than I just don't like him. And I can't help but wonder, in the centuries ahead, as we start validating a lot of these things that Tesla was working on 100 years ago, that we still don't start realizing that he wasn't the most important technological mind of the 20th century. I have this pet theory, again, that I can't not base on anything other than just it's the way I want the world to work. This is total made up bullshit in my head, but I believe it 100%, that almost anything Einstein said is probably false. I don't think the speed of light is constant. And so I don't think anything that's based off the idea of the speed of light being constant can possibly be correct. It makes no sense to me that, there's just no such thing as immutable constant in the physical world. Everything degrades, everything slows down. Everything. There's no exception. Why would light be any different? And as far as I understand any of this stuff, which I don't, if light is the speed of light isn't constant. Let's look at Matthew's going to start messing with all our minds. Matthew, you gotta realize now you're dealing with a bunch of guys with high school educations here. You start talking about so he's saying the speed of light may be faster than we think it is. I think that's what he's saying. We are finding universal past universes. So are you saying that we're finding evidence that, so the very first thing I think of when you say that, Matthew, is something I read where how people would say that the universe expands out until it can't expand anymore, and then it contracts back real quick, and then it blows up again and starts, and it keeps doing this like rubber band thing where it's boom, 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 boom. Is that kind of what you're implying or referring to? Yeah, Dean also says that much of what's been taught to us. Okay, so Matthew would say the universe is vast, never ending. So I think that's the one where they say it's constantly expanding and will just continue to constantly expand, which also raises questions in my mind. Of course, I mean, I believe that the entire natural world is contained within a supernatural world. And so that any laws I try to impose on it are always subject to the veto of a higher power. So Engineered to Succeed says, to be fair, and by the way, Engineered to Succeed is a real engineer, if I remember correctly. The statement that the speed of light is a constant is only true in a vacuum. Light is affected by what it passes through. Yeah, and Anita points out that everything is based on faith, the presupposition that we can act on. I can't prove I'm alive. I can't remember what this is, but it's like you cannot prove that the whole world isn't just a dream, that one person is dreaming and the rest of us are like NPCs in that person's dream. Down to the fact that even though we think we're real, might be a part of his dream. I fully believe, though, that God intends for us to colonize the universe. I believe, again, one of the things I got based it on nothing. But he created this whole universe out there, and he created it for us. I think that means his intention is for us to experience the whole universe. Doesn't mean we will, but I believe his intention was for us to colonize the whole damn thing. That if we can keep our act together long enough for him to not have to get involved again, that he will allow us to travel the stars. Unfortunately, I am very pessimistic of our ability to keep things together long enough for that to happen. I am fairly convinced that we're going to screw it up so bad that he's going to have to get involved again, and then he's going to be like, over, out, everyone out of the pool. And that's what we call the apocalypse. But like, I don't believe there's a set time where it's all going to happen no matter what. I don't think decline is inevitable. Matthew is saying things that like 12 scale vacuum or better can take a beam for miles. Vacuum is a very interesting thing to me. From a practical standpoint, for a brief period of time, about a year, I worked in a place where we built, I built transformers. I would assemble these high voltage electrical transformers. And what we would have to do is we would have to put a vacuum on these things, and they would be on this vacuum for a week. But the way this vacuum was measured was like an algebra problem. I don't remember it all now, but it would be like -12 to the power of E or something. I can't even remember how we measured it. But like the biggest part of my job, well, not the biggest part, but one of the biggest parts of my job was just going over this vacuum system, making sure there was no leaks. And we would get it down and we would have to bake these things. And Dean says, if it's all a simulation, how did I end up working on a fence tending sheep? First off, that sounds pretty cool. But that reminds me of the scene in The Matrix. So we didn't use helium, Matthew. Let me finish the Matrix thought. It reminds me of that scene in The Matrix where the guy's like betraying them, and he's talking to the Agent Smith, and he's saying, "Look, I don't care what you do, but you're going to put me back in the Matrix, and you're going to make me a millionaire playboy, and as long as you do that." And so he willingly goes back into the simulation so that he can have a better, perception of his life. So we didn't use helium. We would heat the things up to like, oh, I see what you're saying. If you were going to check, the only thing we would check is if we just weren't getting down to the negative. It was atmospheres. It was like negative atmospheres or something. And so we would put these things in a big oven. We would hook them all up to this vacuum. And if it wasn't getting down to a certain level, it meant there was a leak somewhere in the vacuum, and I would have to spend days going over the whole system trying to find the leak, which essentially just meant that I would turn off everything. I would shut off valves everywhere until I found the one that wasn't holding the vacuum, and then I'd have to try to figure out where it was leaking and fix that leak. The hillbilly way is to quit alcohol. And then once it had been baked for a certain amount of time and it had got down to that atmospheric level, then we would go in and pump a really acidic oil in there, because what we had to do was make sure that there was absolutely no moisture anywhere in there and no foreign matter, because anything could short it out. Because the whole thing was just these alternating layers of copper. Damn it, dog! It was all these copper sheets alternating with paper, plastic, and I think there might have been an aluminum layer. And so they were like 4 inches wide. Oh, Palmetto's going to sleep. Good night, Palmetto. And they would just be layered, in a continuous run into these big stacks. And then we would stack the stacks. She does sound like a great. Then we would stack the stacks on top of each other. And the way they worked, I guess it just slowed the electricity down. It took the electricity so long to go through all these layers. But if there was any moisture or if there was any organic matter in there or anything, then you'd be shorting it out. The electricity would be jumping up that moisture, or it would skip a layer, and then you could short the whole damn thing out. So we had to get all the moisture out and all that stuff. And when we did, then we would fill it with this oil to keep it all out. And then there had to be this expansion tank on the top, so with when the heat changed, there'd be a give and a take. Yeah, so it was like a metal. It looked like a saucer. Put alcohol on fittings, and you can see where it's leaking from. Oh, that's interesting. And the oil, I can't remember. I think it was called mineral oil. The stuff was awful. If it got on your skin, it burned like crazy. And it smelled awful, and it got in your clothes. Most countries. No, it's a technology. It was a very involved thing. So there was just ladies whose whole job was to sit there and watch these machines that was layering all these layers. And yeah, it was transformer insulation oil, but I think we called it mineral oil. Uh, but yeah, that's what it did. We were making transformers, high voltage transformers. And you've all seen them. If you've ever gone past what I would call a power transfer station, yeah, you've seen those things with all the ribs on them. Those are high voltage transformers. Okay, Anita says we got drilled years ago at a contractor lab here in Dawsonville for wrong density O-rings sent for vacuum seals. NASA allegedly, boom. Isn't that full of PCBs? I am sure that oil, if you're talking about that oil, God knows what that shit was full of. It was awful. Smelled terrible. Would burn your skin if it got on you. It'd ruin your clothes. You couldn't get the smell out. But it was a good job. I worked in what was called the clean room, by myself, assembling these things. And then, oh yeah, the weather's nice. Hey, grand solar minimum, men, is real. It's coming. I'm a believer. You couldn't talk me out of it. It is mid-August. Well, I guess it's late August now. Uh, and, the weather is perfect. In years past, it would be 98 degrees in mid to late August. Into September, we'd still be in the high 90s, incredible humidity, just sweltering. And, we've got some lows coming up in the 60s. Yeah, the weather is amazing lately. We've got some lows coming up in the 60s. We're not going to be getting out of the 70s. I think we're in some low 70s. Yeah. Yeah, we haven't had 100-degree temperatures in Georgia in the last 3 or 4 years. Matthew asked an interesting question. Yeah, Central North Carolina has a low in 63. MI Preppers, come on. It says even in the 90s, there was a red marked area on the maps in the training area that was no-go because of PCBs. Have no idea what happened there. Huh. Yeah, 10 Tigers, we used to have 100-degree days all the time in Georgia in August, July, even into September. So Matthew Fain asked question, chrome lined or 416 stainless barrel. And I don't think most of us could ever tell the difference between the two. I think technically, if you're more interested in long-term reliabilities, let's say reliability. I think ultimately chrome lined is probably better. It's easier to clean and it lasts longer. The 416 stainless is probably used in barrels that are more designed for accuracy. I think in both instances, the vast majority of us could never tell the difference. If you clean your rifle semi-regularly, yeah, you're never going to tell either way. So I think I've stopped checking. So I used to only get chrome lined barrels, but in recent years I don't even check anymore. I look for the barrel that the length I'm looking for, the weight I'm looking for. I kind of assume that if I stick with a reputable company, that we live in a golden age in a lot of ways, and this is another one of them. It's really hard to buy bad stuff anymore. Which is kind of boring. Wow, engineered ETS has some lows in the 40s this week. Nita says, did you work externally outside gloved assembly box? I'm not 100% sure what that means, Anita, so probably not. Okay, all right, man. Here we go. Matthew's being interesting right now. He's building his first upper, and he hasn't decided what barrel to go with. All right. Oh, clean room, not box. I worked mostly in the clean room, except when I was hooking everything up into the ovens with the vacuums. That was outside the clean room. So all the assembly was done inside the clean room. The elements would be made in one clean room and then passed through a window into my clean room. Then I would assemble the whole thing, uh, and then it would leave the clean room and go into the oven. Okay, let's help Matthew build his first upper. Uh, oh, ETS, boring, boo. ETS says it's your first upper. Don't worry about it. You will build many more uppers. Cop out. No, no. How can we fight over that? Uh, uh, so my question, Matthew, is what is it you want this rifle to be or do? And unfortunately, as much as I'm giving him a little bit of shit for being boring, ETS is right. My guess is, since this is your first one, what I said is the truth. I said it and I stand by it. I said what I said and I meant it. Uh, Light field rifle. Okay. Then actually, I say you need to look up uh, the pencil profile. Okay, so it sounds like maybe you're building a stoner, right? What would stoner do? Are you building the in range TV slash Forgotten Weapons uh, uh, carbine that they talk about that they built on a? If that's what you're doing, which I did, I have one of those and I love it. It is my favorite AR that I own. Uh, oh God, no. Oh, never mind. Well, look, if you want a lightweight pencil profile barrel, Faxon really does make the best one. Now they're pricey, but in my opinion, they're worth it. I have a Faxon. It's not a pencil profile; it's a gunner profile, uh, and I have been very impressed with it. It is extremely lightweight. It was very, very easy to get a zero on it. It is very accurate. I don't know how much it would. Allegedly, the Faxon has a process that means that when the barrel heats up, the zero doesn't change or it changes very little. I don't. I haven't done any rapid fire with it. So I mean, I trust that that's true the case. I haven't tested that. I have been very impressed with that Faxon barrel. I got the 20 inch. That's why I couldn't do the pencil profile. They only do the pencil profile and up to the 18 inch, at least at that time. And the 20 inch was what was called a gunner profile, but it's still a thin profile barrel. Extremely lightweight, and I have been very, very pleased with the accuracy. Uh, Now, uh, good light coyote gun for 100 yards. Yeah, I think for 100 yards, you can't go wrong. There's really like, you just couldn't do anything that would work. Actually, MI Prepper, I was gonna take the base of fire rifle out this weekend when I was up at Sasquatch's place, but because I was staying at a hotel, I didn't want to be dragging this 24-inch barreled AR-15 in and out of the hotel room. I figured I'd freak somebody out, so I ended up not taking it. But that would have been the best place to do it because he's got a 150-yard range up there. But yeah, I still do test it. I've got some more testing I want to do with it. I'm kind of at the point though where I believe it's a good concept, and I just need to. I want to get better with it. It was especially transitioning. So the So the it's got that binary trigger on it, and the one thing I struggle with is my Marine Corps training, which probably I'm not able to overcome, is really good trigger control. So you squeeze a shot, you hold the trigger, you let it off slowly after the shot. Uh, and that doesn't work with the binary. For the binary, you got to squeeze and let go right away. Uh, so I'm pretty good with my trigger discipline and taking that nice accurate shot. I need to practice with that binary doing the double tap and still not lose my good trigger discipline for ac- accurate single shots. And that's just repetition. You just got to do the training. And the truth of the matter is, I just don't shoot as much as I need to keep a high level of skill. So that's the downside with the BOF, is that it does require a little more practice to be able to use the two different, because the whole point is that you can use it as a DMR rifle, uh, and then you can switch it over to the binary mode, and you can use it as a light machine gun substitute. And that's two different skill sets. Uh, so I really need to work more. What made me decide to go with 5.56 instead of 308? The whole idea of MI Prepper is that it would be a replacement for the saw. In a militia where you're not able to own a machine gun, obviously, that it would basically be a saw substitute. With ammo compatibility. Allow me to try that again. With ammo compatibility with the rest of the fire team. So it's a fire team weapon. I think when I said light machine gun, that was an incorrect phrase. I'm sorry. Uh, Although I guess the saw is technically a light machine gun. Uh, so yeah, I definitely think of that BOF as being a fire team level element. Uh, and so then, you can use the ammo and the magazines from the rest of the fire team. If we were gonna up it and try to get some, here's the deal with that 10 Tigers. You can go buy a complete upper. You probably pay less than if you try to build an upper. I still think there's value in building the upper. I don't think the only trustworthy drum I have found in my prepper is that Magpul 60 round. I do have a 200 round drum for it, but it's not. It's not a reliable enough for field use. It's fun. It's a good drum. It's double drum. Looks fantastic on there. It's really cool. It's not one I would carry in the field. The problem with the drums too is storage. Having web gear that supports a drum is really difficult. Uh, so, like maybe if you had a good reliable drum, you could start off with that in the gun. But then when it runs dry, what do? You throw this expensive drum away? Do you try to find a way? How do you handle the drum? As far as I can tell right now, the best option would actually be one of those double stacked or I'm sorry, quad stacked, like Magpul makes some. A couple people make them where it's like a it's like a double thick 30 rounder. Yeah, saw pouch for a drum. You can do something like that. Uh, so if I was gonna do anything, that's what I would do. I would start experimenting with those 60 round box mags rather than a drum. Uh, and I would wait for someone else to solve the problem of how to reliably uh, do the drums. Because the whole idea of this is not to be a range toy, even though it is a range toy. It's ideally, to allow a man to fulfill his role in his required constitutional role in the militia and be an effective infantry force, to offset tyranny and corruption and all the stuff. which means it has to be effective in the field, which means you have to be able to carry the ammo. You got to have web gear. You got to be able to carry this ammo plus, all the gear you need to sustain yourself in the field. It definitely becomes a exercise in compromise. The gear you carry is everything's going to be a compromise. That's why I don't have a pistol on my loadout, because I don't think it's a good compromise for the capabilities it gives me, the weight and the space it requires. The capabilities isn't worth it. Isn't worth the compromise, the trade-off. Same thing with the drum mags. Okay. I think we're running out of steam. Let's see what we've missed. Yeah, my prepper is saying the Surefire Mad PG quad stacks. Yeah. Saw patch for the drum. Matthew likes the 20 round. I like the 20 rounds too. I have 20 rounds. I like them for a number of reasons. So when I'm doing the loadout I have for the BOF rifle right now is I have chest pouches for the 30 round mags. Then I have belt pouches that have 20 rounders that have the 72 grain or 77 grain bullets I like to use for the DMR function. So I have regular 55 or 62 grain in the chest rig for just the binary, suppression roll, and then in the belt mags I'll have the 20 rounders that then have the 77 grain DMR rounds in them that I would use for some more precision shooting. And so far, that is what has worked the best for the two dual rolls of the rifle. So you'd have 60 rounds of, and obviously you could do DMR with 62, with the regular rounds. It's not like you'd have to, but it makes it just slightly more effective. You flip and rip. Dean says, it seems like a drum bipod would encourage whoever is running it to stay put and not move, which could be problematic. Yeah, that would be problematic. It's also true on the saw, which has drums and bipods. Yeah, that's definitely a consideration. But your base of fire doesn't move quite as much as everything else anyway, because that's everyone else is maneuvering around that base of fire. So it does move obviously with the fire team, and but that has a capability, and you just want a little bit more accurate fire, especially full auto. If you've ever fired full auto, it is difficult to control. It's not. They call it an area weapon. It's not a point weapon. It's an area weapon. Because even the guys who are really, really, really good at it, it's still not a precise point target or weapon. It's still, suppressive fire. You talk about when you're doing full auto, you're actually talking about your beaten cone. There's a cone out there that you want all the rounds to fall within that cone. It's not like you see one man out there and you start, you pump them with 10 rounds or something. There's an area target, and you want all your rounds to fall within a fairly large area of that target. Yeah, I think Here's what my thought process was at the time at my prepper, and of course I was constrained by what's legal. I think if I was going to go the next step with it, it would be uh, probably something like a 50 cal, and so you would add a fifth member to the fire team, and he would have a 50 cal. And obviously, this is prohibitively expensive. I can't play around with this idea. And then, yeah, that would actually it would replace both a grenade launcher and a heavy weapon. More like a. So if you were really, and of course, then you start questioning if you've got the 50 cal, do you need the BOF? I would say still yes, because the 50 cal ammunition is so heavy and you would never have that much of it. But then the question becomes, then do you want a whole man dedicated to a weapon that get doesn't have that much capability to be used? Uh, I don't know. There's questions. At some point you do hit the ceiling of that NFA, and you have to start asking questions about what's effective and what's not. Ideally, though, yeah, you would have a militia that was able to be an entire squad, just not a fire team. And then over a 13-man squad or 15-man squad or whatever it ended up being, yeah, 50 cal anti-material would be awesome. Uh, maybe you do. Maybe you have one of those BOFs set up on a 308 platform. Uh, yeah, no, there's no more cheap 50 cal left. Yeah. I mean, it was never cheap, but so maybe the next step is to get an AR-10 set up with a binary trigger. You put a good heavy barrel on it, uh, or maybe you do a BAR. They still make civilian BARs. Maybe you can take a civilian BAR and you have it in 308, get a heavy barrel on it, and maybe the best solution is the old solution at that point. But it seems like maybe an AR-10 could do the same thing. Maybe when you're talking about that bigger round and you're doing some higher volume of fire, maybe the gas impingement systems uh, aren't the best idea. Maybe you do need to go back to a some kind of piston system. All right, somebody said something interesting. That cigar's done. Could drones serve as your air support? I think so. 25 round Lancer mags are good for 308. I think we're all still waiting to see what comes out of drones. Okay, Mike says, you said in a previous chat that if you shoot someone in self defense, you are shooting someone made in the image of God. But wouldn't that person be acting for Satan if he was trying to cause you harm? Uh, would he be acting for Satan? Let's let's take Satan out of it for just a minute to simplify the reasoning. So yeah, that in theory, if you're a righteous man and you're acting in legitimate self-defense, then you are opposing a child. Yeah, it is a rabbit hole, Matthew. Then you are opposing a child of God made in God's image who is uh, acting in a way contrary to his created nature. So in theory, you could formulate this in a way that says, by opposing him, by stopping him from uh, uh, committing this material sin in the material world, you are saving him spiritual repercussions. So if I'm following your reasoning right, by opposing the person who is trying to do you unrighteous bodily harm, you are performing a loving action, which I agree with. Up to the point though where you have to understand, or we have to acknowledge. I'm sorry, I know that you understand. Uh, you have to acknowledge that when you end his physical existence, you are precluding any potential spiritual renewal or spiritual good that might come to him through his continued physical existence. Remember, all of our, once you die, there's no more possibility for spiritual renewal or spiritual achievement or spiritual change, and it's the spirit world that matters. So yes, by opposing him in the physical world, you can be saving him from committing, uh, what we would call sin, and so therefore incurring spiritual repercussions, which are what's important. But you are also precluding, his potential salvation. Although his salvation can actually be secure, he could still be doing something sinful and still have his salvation secured. You are precluding his salvation. You are precluding any righteous acts he might. You are taking on the role of God in deciding that his life no longer has further value, which is still a legitimate decision to be made. It's legitimate for you to make that decision. God has expressly laid out in his word that you have the right to make that decision in those circumstances, but you really, 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 really want to make sure you make the right decision. That is not a decision that you want to screw up, because taking on God's authority, making eternal decisions for someone else's salvation, for someone else's spiritual well-being, is a heavy, 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 heavy burden. Just think about it in the terms of being a parent. Where obviously you're not killing your children, but you're making decisions that affect the spiritual well-being and the spiritual future of your children every day, and it's a heavy, heavy burden. And we all stress about it. And are we doing the right thing by our kids? Is this yada yada. Now up that to an eternal ending of all options. There's no more options after that. What that person has done up to that point is all that can be done. One of the things our Catholic brothers get right, Mark, if you're still in the chat, one of the things our Catholic brothers get right is that they, yeah, Pat Tillman, I'd have to think about that. Do you want to explain what you're thinking there, am I prepper? One of the things our Catholic brethren get right is that they teach that the individual has a role to play in his own salvation. Sometimes some of our more wild Protestant evangelical brethren dispute that, and they will say that salvation is solely and wholly and without any other inputs comes through Christ. And on a certain level, that's right, initially. I'll have to go back up and look at my prepper. In the Protestant world, sometimes we'll call it sanctification. You have salvation and sanctification, where salvation is this one-time thing and sanctification is this ongoing thing, and there's a little bit of a gray area. In order to maintain your salvation, you have to go through a process of sanctification. And that's sometimes how Protestants come to the same conclusions that the Catholics have when they say that you have a role to play in your own salvation. When you end someone's life, you end their ability to have a role in their own salvation. You end their ability to participate in their sanctification. What is all that will be then for their spiritual reality. And like I said, sometimes that's a legitimate thing. You save people from greater sin, greater degradation. You save the people they're oppressing. there are times when it is necessary to make that decision and take that action. There are people who preclude or who give up their right to continued existence. Doesn't mean they deserve to die, but they give up their right to continued existence. You know, if you're drunk driving and you slam into an overpass at 100 miles an hour and die, you didn't deserve to die, but you gave up your right to live. Uh, Unemployed must be good, isn't it? Like 1 a.m. where you're at. Well, it's Saturday night. I mean, tomorrow's Sunday. Uh, but yeah, I think it's around 1 a.m. And while I'm technically unemployed, I'm still working. I'm traveling for some work and uh, doing side jobs, and I'm still bringing in money. I'm just not clocking in anywhere. It's a little stressful, but it's not bad. I'm holding off on going back to a 9 to 5 until I see if this other side thing is going to come to fruition. I have some savings, and so I'm going to burn through some of those savings as a little bit of an investment. And because if that side thing worked, if it turned into more, it would be a wonderful thing. It would really be life changing. So it's worth the risk. I may have to sell some of my silver, but again, worth it. So I've set a date. I've set an end date when I have to go back to the real world. Like I said, I'm traveling a couple of days a week to go do some work, and I got, like I said, side work, and so uh, it sucks working for others. It is really nice not having to have the stress of. It is really stress free to know that you're showing up Monday morning at a certain time, and you don't have to worry about anything other than showing up and doing what you're told. Uh, there is a there is some value in that, no doubt. I have a lot of respect for employers and people who provide other people jobs. There is a lot of stress in owning a business and uh, taking on that responsibility and that burden. That being said, okay, Anita says, I protest that Catholic claim, so I guess I'm hyper grace, but I do admit to being a serial killer every day in my head because I have triggers but practice patience. Uh, so, I mean, I would ask some questions, Anita. So you say you're hyper grace, uh, but I think you'd also say that you can't just, say a prayer and then go do whatever the hell you want for as long as you want and expect that prayer to get you through. I know, like our Calvinist brother would say that, which I think is a little bit of a cop out. I struggle with the Calvinist on the other end of this thing. Calvinist would say that if you experience salvation, then you experience a total salvation, and you no longer will sin. That any continuance of sin invalidates your salvation experience. I think that a hyper Calvinist might argue with the way I've said that, but I think once you wrestled him to the ground, he would admit that's his position. That there's this one-time salvation and sanctification. God helps those who helps themselves. Uh, Hey, Provider Bones is here. We were just talking about you earlier in the stream, Provider Bones. I got to see Provider Bones this, I guess it wasn't this weekend. It was just a few days ago up at Sasquatch's. I had some good time. So, yeah, but what we would, justification versus sanctification, free will versus predestination. Yeah, these would be the arguments that would be had between a Calvinist and pretty much everybody else. Free will, God only knows. I'm pretty sure that's a joke I heard somewhere. So most of us, if if we were able to start defining terms, I'm convinced that the vast majority of the world's problems are merely ones of vocabulary, and once you get everybody to use the same vocabulary words, the vast majority of disagreements will disappear, will evaporate. And so when you start talking about justification versus sanctification, I think you got to define your terms first. In most cases, I think most people would end up thinking justification and sanctification are, no, I'm going to start, you know what, it is 1 a.m. and I shouldn't start wading into heavy theological debates when I'm a little tired. Justification, you're justified through Christ. So I think justification would be what some of us would call salvation. So my formulation is that salvation is free, salvation is only through Christ, salvation is open to all. And then sanctification for me, in my formulation, is the process of me living my life so that I stay inside that salvation. No one can take my salvation away from me, but I can give it up. So sanctification, my role in my salvation. Mark has been real quiet, so he must have left. Next time we see Mark, we need to make fun of him because he would definitely have something to say about all this. So sanctification for me would be the role that I have to play in my salvation. I don't secure my salvation. Nothing I do can get me my salvation. It is a gift that I can accept, but I can't do anything to earn it or deserve it. But once I have it, it's up to me to maintain it. That's probably the best way to say it. Yeah, the salvation is a free gift. What is a woman? We'll go there next. But once I've been given that gift of salvation, I have to maintain that gift of salvation. It's just like if someone, oh, my buddy gave me a gun. Sasquatch gave me a gun. I didn't deserve that gun. I couldn't acquire it for myself. But he gave me a gun. Now that I have the gun, if I want to keep the gun, I have to maintain the gun. I have a role to play in me possessing that gun. I did not have a role to play in me acquiring the gun, but I have a role to play in me possessing the gun. And that would be my explanation for salvation and sanctification. I would need to look up justification. Hey, Supreme Leader Clyde. Yeah, I enjoyed that P30. That was kind of fun shooting. It was definitely a different kind of pistol than I'm used to. Yeah, I haven't been doing a lot of videos lately, Clyde. I kind of ran out of ones I could do easily. I need to expand my knowledge base. Oh, I'm glad that helped, Dean. That's kind of flattering. I need to expand my knowledge base, and it's just getting harder to make videos that I'm pleased with because I've kind of said all the things I know. I've sort of exhausted my knowledge base. But I'm going to get back to, I've been trying to get back to making more of them. I really enjoy the channel. I really enjoy interacting with you men. And I usually learn a lot and have a lot of fun. And, I have words that I need to get out. So it's a positive thing in my life. That being said, I think I have probably run out of words for this evening. I definitely ran out of cigars. I hate it that I'm going to bail once we started talking about salvation and justification and sanctification. Wow, you're getting to the deep stuff. I wish we could. I wish we were smart enough to be able to plumb Matthew Fain's knowledge here a little bit more, because he's I don't know when we'll get a chance to talk to someone who's got experience in subatomic particles again. That's a first in the history of this channel that we ever had someone with his knowledge base available to us. Manifest destiny for the win. Yes. Dominion theology. Have more coffee and stay. Yeah, Matthew, I try to keep the Christian stuff. I try to wait for my spots. If that's all you do, then people kind of get bored and they wander off. But if you wait till it kind of comes up organically, then you can really have some good conversations and some impactful interactions with some men. Another one of the things I really like about this channel, and the men who seem to gravitate towards it. But anywho, all righty, man. I'm gonna call this one. I really enjoy it. Oh, what's the best handgun caliber in your opinion? God, crying out loud, Clyde. Uh, what are we doing? Unfortunately, as boring as it is, ETS is bailing. Uh, Good night, ETS. It's good to see you, sir. Shalom. Unfortunately for Carrie, oh well, there you said it. 357 sig. Yeah, I really like 357 sig. I like 357 sig. I love 41 Magnum. I think 41 Magnum is uh, one of the best all-around cartridges there is. If you call it your masculinity is suspect. But 357 sig or 41 mag would be my favorites. Unfortunately, both of them are expensive and a little, they're not available in a lot of options. So, sometimes we talked about this earlier in the night too. Are you ever going to let perfect be the enemy of good enough? Or we should never let perfect be the enemy of good enough. And unfortunately, 9mm is good enough. Oh, Provider Bones has a friend who just got a 41 Magnum. I love 41 Magnum. Absolutely love it. I would have. Oh, ETS says the 357 sig fed really reliably in a P229. And availability is a thing. 9mm, 357, 44. These are proven cartridges that have wide availability in a wide amount of platforms. Oh, Clyde's got to go to church in the morning. Yeah, I'm a Sabbath keeper, so we do our churches on Saturday. Our churches on Saturday. So if you were just going to sit down and like get on a piece of paper and compare the capabilities of 9mm to 357 sig, the 357 sig blows it out of the water. Same thing with the others. Hey, Mike's still here. But if you start factoring other things, the things it's chambered in, can you get it? The range of options available. Oh yeah, 10mm too. I forgot 10mm. 10mm is a really good option all the way around. Unfortunately, I think the best options are the boring options, which is a shame because I really like the fun exotic stuff. The 10mm, 357 SIGs, 41 Magnum. Yeah, but if I could if nothing else mattered but just the cartridge itself, it would be 357 SIG and 41 Magnum. Oh, really? Matthew says his shield in 357 SIG is a handful. I didn't. Well, that makes sense. I mean, it's a 357 Magnum in a semi-auto. So not only do you have the just the organic recoil of the cartridge, you also have that slide going back and forth. So it makes sense that it would have an elevated feel to it. But anyway, and you know what? Don't sleep on 40 Smith and Wesson. I mean, 40 is a pretty good compromise in a lot of areas. If 9mm is not quite enough and 10mm is too much, then 40 Smith and Wesson's a really nice sweet part. Yeah, my carry is an all steel framed Jericho, and in 9mm, there's not even any recoil at all. I actually would like to find out if I could. The thing with the old Baby Eagles, which the Jericho is just a version of the old Baby Eagle, is that you used to be able to drop barrels in there and swap them out to do. I know they did 40 AE, and I think they might have done 357 SIG, and I think they could do 40 Smith and Wesson too. I know I had a baby eagle that was chambered for 40 Smith and Wesson, but I can't remember if that one, if you could drop in like the 40 AE and all that. Uh, but anyway, cartridge debates are always fun. Uh, Always fun. I'm starting to think that 380 might be a, at least as valid an option for carry as 9 mil. I'm starting to wonder again, if not letting good enough, perfect be the enemy of good enough. Is the 380 good enough for most self defense needs? And I think it probably is. Yeah, it's the same cartridge, just neck down. So with the SIG, you're just getting slightly better ballistics, a little better trajectory. It's a little zippier. Uh, I tend to think that velocity is all right. Am I prepper? Good night, bud. I tend to think velocity is better than mass. Uh, yeah, there's 10 Tigers says it too. All right, thanks, Mike. There's no doubt 44 mag is a proven effective cartridge. Uh, Anywho, okay, man. Oh, 380 neck down to 32 NAA Hornady. I got to be honest with you, Matthew. I have never heard of that round. I'm not familiar with it whatsoever. I do like 32s though. I like 32 H&R. I like the 327 Magnum. Uh, Gold dots. Gold dots my thing. Uh, Good night, Landon. Shalom. Oh, it failed. They all fail, unfortunately. My 41 Magnum failed too. I mean, I know it's still out there, but I had a 41 Magnum in Blackhawk. Uh, yeah, I like the 327, but I think it's probably failed too, as did 30 Super Carrier. But I had to sell the 41. I didn't have to, but I ended up trading the 41 Magnum because I just couldn't find ammo for it reliably enough. And there were some other reasons too. I think I decided I needed a semi-auto carry pistol because my Blackhawk, the one I had was a Blackhawk, so obviously a single shot, and 6-inch barrel, and you just couldn't carry it around very easily. But anyway. All right, man. We appreciate you. Yeah, 460 rolling. I remember that one. Now there was a couple other there was another 460 and a 480, and there was some other stuff in that size for a while that was trying to take over. And I thought they all had a 32 H&R revolver. I think is a really good option for carry. I think it does 999 things out of 1,000 that you would need a carry pistol to do. But absolutely, phone's actually about to die too. I'm running out of juice. Men, we appreciate you. Have a good night. Thank you so much. It was an excellent discussion. This was a really good stream. We'll hopefully see ETS being interesting again. Warthog 45, 10 mil. We should have started with this discussion. Best handgun caliber. Go. All right, man. I'm hoping to be able to do a stream next Saturday. I'm thinking we're going to be able to pull it off. But I'm not positive. So hopefully we'll see you then.